Board of Education for Tuesday, May 22nd, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have Spanish translation available.
We have Esperanza Villegas with us tonight. We'll be meeting her daughter in just a moment.
Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Esperanza Villegas y esta noche estoy aquí para traducir. Si alguno de ustedes necesita ayuda, me puede encontrar en la parte trasera de esta sala. Gracias.
Thank you. We do have headsets available for the hearing impaired, so please indicate if you need a headset. Before we go on, I also want to note that one of our board members, Mrs. Cordero, is absent this evening, so all action taken tonight will reflect her absence. Introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions.
Well, we have a number of outstanding students with us tonight. I'm pleased that they brought their families, and we have a number of educators, both teachers and administrators in the room. These are some of our best. Should we start with the spelling bee? No, let's not. Let's start with the California State Science Fair. The California State Science Fair was held last week, and 7 students in our secondary schools were recognized. In the junior division for behavioral and social sciences, the second place state winner from La Colina Junior High was Michael Feldman. Michael, would you please come forward? Michael. Here, why don't you stand right over here? Michael's project was decision-making in the face of risk. And Michael's science project also won Best in Fair for junior high in the Santa Barbara County Science Fair. Congratulations, Michael. Also in behavioral and social sciences at the State Science Fair, honorable mention went to La Colina junior high student Anisha Kumar. Anisha? Anisha's project was entitled, Does Encouragement Really Help? Yes or no? Yes. I knew it. But she proved it. In cognitive science, the second place state winner from Goleta Valley Junior High School was Rishika Singh. Rishika's project was eyes, nose, or mouth. Measure their effectiveness in face recognition. Great, interesting title, huh? In chemistry, the honorable mention went to Goleta Valley Junior High student Daniel Gay. Daniel? Well, I'm sorry Daniel isn't with us because the title of his project was Effects of Voltage and Concentration on the Fractal Dimension of Electrodeposited Copper Aggregates. Mr. Clemenger, I know you know all about that. In human biology, honorable mention went to Goleta Valley Junior High School's Kana Yamamoto. Kana? Kana's project was, how does the eardrum affect our hearing? And in toxicology, honorable mention went to Goleta Valley Junior High student Evan Liu. Evan's project was green fluorescent protein. aren't these all interesting? I mean, wouldn't you love to just see all the projects here? Okay, we'll invite you back. Stay here. We have one more person to honor, and this is at the senior division. In the senior division for high school students in zoology, the second place state winner was San Marcos High School sophomore Evan Lincoln. And Evan's project was LED wavelengths on the phototaxis of Artemia. You'll have to read about it in the newspaper. I read it and it was quite interesting. Evan's science project also won Best Affair Senior High in the Santa Barbara County Science Fair. Congratulations, all of these students.
Dr. Sarvis, I just have to comment. It's been a long time since, I've been on the board a long time, and it's a long time since I recall hearing 3 behavioral scientists. And those teachers out there who are turning people into behavioral scientists, good.
Well, our students made a great showing, and we're very proud of you.
Yeah, it's
Mike.
huge congratulations, and to the science teachers who I know supported them the whole way through, and the family members. So thank you. That's amazing.
Exactly. Community service. I'd like to acknowledge our top community service winners. The top 2 seniors at each school are recognized by the board for their outstanding community service work. Tonight, we recognize 6 students. They can't all be here, but I'll try. From Dos Pueblos High School with 862 hours, Jeff Cifuentes. Jeff will be attending Santa Barbara City College. And with 888 hours, Megan Yoles. Megan will attend Pacific University and study elementary education, and I'm sorry that she isn't here tonight, but she's just a wonderful example of a great citizen and fine student. From Santa Barbara High School with 1,033 hours, Ohan Arakelian. Ohan will attend UC Berkeley and major in business administration. And with 752 hours, Rachel Green. Rachel will attend Santa Barbara City College. From San Marcos High School, Johanna Rangel, with 1,214 hours, will attend Santa Barbara City College, and she isn't with us tonight. But we do have Alexander Kepelainen. I knew that, Alexander. Students, we're very proud of you, and if I don't get your name right, do tell me, because Nilufar is telling me. Alexander put in 1,513 hours and will attend UC Santa Barbara. Congratulations, students, and thank you. Thank you on behalf of the schools and the community, because I know that your service really adds tremendously to the sense of what students give back and bring to our community. Thank you. Board?
I think it's so fun to see students take our sort of minimum requirement and just run with it. It's so impressive, and what you do makes a huge difference in the community, so thank you. I don't know if any other board members want to
And I
comment.
just want to say, you're real ambassadors from the school district to the community, and we really appreciate the job you do.
Good. Thanks, students. Well, let's go on to the National Hispanic Recognition Program. This is a big deal. In their junior year, students take the preliminary SAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, which qualifies them to enter competitions for prestigious scholarships and to participate in recognition programs such as the National Hispanic Recognition Program. Students must be at least 1/4 Hispanic Latino, meet the PSAT, the NMSQT cutoff score for their state, and achieve above a certain grade point average. Annually, nearly 5,000 of the highest scoring students from a total nationwide of more than 200,000 junior high school juniors who take the test are identified in the National Hispanic Recognition Program. This year, 4 of these students are from our district. We're very proud of them as well. From Santa Barbara High School, we welcome Karen Villegas, daughter of our own district office employee and translator, Esperanza Villegas. Karen. Karen will attend Harvard and major in international relations and environmental policy. I went to her I went to her job today just to make sure that she would be here. From San Marcos High School, we welcome Rafael Rosendo. Rafael? I should have gone to his job as well. Rafael will attend Gordon College, and we don't know his major yet. We will find out. From Dos Pueblos High School, we welcome Katie DeHarris. And Katie, is it DeHarris? DeHarris. Okay. Katie will attend Vassar College and major in English. Also from Dos Pueblos High School is Alejandro Velas. Alejandro? Alejandro will attend UCLA and major in electrical engineering. Congratulations, students. Board?
Fantastic job. Many congratulations to you, and good luck next year. It sounds like you're all doing very exciting things. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's go on to the National Merit Scholarship Program. Students in the 11th grade also enter the National Merit Scholarship competition when they take the preliminary SAT National Merit Scholarship qualifying test. This year, approximately 1.5 million students entered the competition. In February, only 15,000 semifinalists were notified that they advanced to the final standings, and beginning in March and continuing through mid-June, approximately 8,200 finalists are being notified that they are winners of merit scholarships, which are college-sponsored, corporate-sponsored, or the $2,500 National Merit Scholarship. This year, we have 15 students from our district that made the list of finalists, and one of those students has been selected to receive a Merit Scholarship Award. I'd like to introduce our finalists. First, from Santa Barbara High School, we have National Merit finalist Will Stark. Will is headed for Whitmore College. Will, have you decided on a major? Not yet. Not yet. Okay, maybe later in tonight's proceedings you can tell us. Also from Santa Barbara High School, National Merit finalist Jay Park. Jay will attend UC Berkeley. Your major? Undecided. Well, you know, life is long. And play with things for a while. If you're undecided, just play. Well, by saying that, I mean take subjects in everything. Yeah. San Marcos High School, National Merit Finalist, Richard O'Dowd. And Richard is going to Caltech. Also unable to attend due to a final band concert tonight is San Marcos High School's National Merit Finalist, Mark Skavorodko. Mark will be attending Westmont College. And unable to attend due to a senior piano recital is San Marcos High School. These are outstanding students. They're very busy doing all sorts of things, and this is a busy time of the year. Is outstanding student Colin Barkley. He will attend the University of San Diego, majoring in the sciences. And finally, unable to attend from San Marcos High School. You keep those kids really busy, Norm. I'm impressed, actually. Is National Merit Finalist Daniel Inbar. And we understand that Daniel may take some time off after he graduates. Maybe he will actually play. I'll bet not. I know Daniel Inbar, and I think he'll be very busy. From Dos Pueblos High School, National Merit Finalist Fiona Georgakis. Fiona will attend Columbia University and major in biology. And from Dos Pueblos High School, National Merit Finalist Jacob Kovacs Goodman. Jacob will attend Stanford and major in economics. Also from Dos Pueblos, National Merit Finalist Corinne Dores. Corinne, is it Dores? Dore. Oh, must be a French name. Doesn't have an E on the end. You drop that silent sound. She will attend Juanita College in Pennsylvania. She has not determined her major. Pre-med. And from Dos Pueblos, National Merit Finalist Anna Nelson will, Anna Nelson? Anna will be attending UC Santa Cruz and studying art. Students, can I have you just move up one level here? We've got more coming. Great. You can stay right there. Good. From Dos Pueblos High School, National Merit Finalist Alexander Pearson. And Alexander will attend UC Santa Cruz, where he will study English. From Dos Pueblos High School, National Merit Finalist Lillian Preston. Well, there was some question about whether she would make it to here tonight, but she will attend Virginia Tech and study architecture. Also from Dos Pueblos, finalist Yidi Wang. And Yidi will attend UCSB and plans to study molecular biology. And unfortunately, we were not able to reach Isabel D'Arcy. Did Isabel make it? Bummer. She is also a National Merit Finalist. Well, our last Dos Pueblos High School student to be honored tonight, National Merit Finalist Angela Dye, is also our district's National Merit Scholarship. Angela, scholar. As our National Merit Scholar, she will attend Princeton University in the fall. Angela has not yet decided on a major, but I really like this. We understand that she is leaning towards something mathy. I like that. Congratulations, students.
Yes. Congratulations on behalf of the board. I know.
Week in June. And as we receive that final report, we will schedule a board report at the earliest possible board meeting. Finally, Employee Appreciation Day will take place this Friday. You know that we had to cancel it or postpone it because of the fire. It was very difficult to get another date, and fortunately Borders has worked with us, so we will hold it this Friday. And that's it for tonight's superintendent's report.
All right, we will move on to item C2, the announcement of closed session action. We do have a number of items to report out. Starting with item B2, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. I'll go ahead and read this announcement. On a motion made by Deacon and seconded by Noel, the Board of Education, by a vote of 4-0, has accepted and approved the settlement of a tort action in Santa Barbara County Superior Court case number 1263677, entitled Jane Doe and Patricia B. versus the Santa Barbara School Districts et al. The names of the plaintiffs are protected by privacy requirements. Pursuant to the settlement, the district has agreed to pay plaintiffs the sum of $110,000. The entire settlement, as well as all the costs of defending this action, will be paid by insurance. There is no admission of any liability by the school district. That was item B2. On item B3, this is the approval denial of an application for interdistrict transfers for Santa Barbara Elementary School District. It was moved by Deacon and seconded by Parker to deny the interdistrict transfer appeals of 6 pupils to the Santa Barbara Elementary District. That motion passed 3-0 with 1 abstention. The abstention was Noel. And again, a reminder that Cordero is absent for this meeting. On to item B4. This was approval denial of an application for interdistrict transfers for Santa Barbara Secondary School District. There were 2 motions made for this item. The first was moved by Herod and seconded by Deacon to approve the interdistrict transfer appeals to the Santa Barbara Secondary District, but deny placement at Dos Pueblos High School for 2 pupils. That passed 4-0. The second motion was moved by Herron and seconded by Noel to deny the interdistrict transfer appeal to the Santa Barbara Secondary District for 1 pupil, and that passed 4-0. On to item B5. It was moved by Noel and seconded by Deacon to approve the Casey waivers for graduation for students with disabilities. That passed 4-0. And a reminder that we will be returning to closed session at the end of this meeting to deal with item B6. And now it's time for item C3, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Yes, we do. Kate Smith.
It's not well known that I'm one of California's credentialed drama teachers. They stopped giving a credential for teaching drama in 1975. So I'm coming to the podium today to say that the San Marcos production of Man of La Mancha was one of the best productions I have ever seen. And that includes professional productions. It was magic, and I am giving my kudos to the San Marcos Theater and Music Department. The FCMAT report is an important document, and I've submitted that to the Santa Barbara Board of Supervisors and the Santa Barbara City Council. Page 20 mentions that the Santa Barbara School District is engaged in unethical and illegal behavior in collusion with the Santa Barbara County Office of Education and the SELPA, and that will be the beginning of a 4-pronged investigation. Please visit SB School Talk and read Stanford University's Dr. David Arredondo's policy paper on juvenile justice, child development, and mental health. The Gang Task Force and the Truancy Program is institutionalized racism and child abuse, and the ACLU, NAACP, and Marian Wright Edelman's Children's Defense Fund is dismantling this school-to-prison pipeline, which started here in Santa Barbara, and there was a coalition of professionals that went to Joe Centano, and we're awaiting word of an investigation. The congressional hearing on special education, there was a congressional hearing, and the report came out last week. The report was absolutely horrifying, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of school corruption and exposure. They reported that hundreds of children were killed by school personnel using dangerous restraints, and this is if you could Google it. There are many articles about it. Finally, I'm submitting questions that Barbara Kiani refused to accept by email because email is so unreliable. So to prove that she got it, and because I don't have a printer, she printed it out for me at my request, and unfortunately she could not figure out how to print a copy for herself. When I inquired about the answers to my questions, she wrote me a letter 2 months later to say, well, she needs the hard copy. So here it is. I asked about the money left over, $6,000 left over from Measures H and I. There were contributions from public funds, and I was wondering what happened.
Your 3 minutes are up, Kate. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Well, here's the questions that I would like answered by.
Any other public comment?
No.
All right, moving on to item C4, the acceptance of donations.
Move to approve with gratitude.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Dr. Noel, I assume that's an aye from you. It passes unanimously. At this point, with no board objection, we will take a 5-minute break to, it is working at this point? Okay, thank you. We will not take a 5-minute break. I'm so glad. I thought that there were more technical difficulties, so I'm glad that that's been fixed. Okay, well, fingers crossed. All right, so we are on to item D, the consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled?
On D1, the minutes of April 28th.
You want to?
On D1, the minutes of April 28th, there's one motion by me that I didn't get a chance to review the tape. I've been out of town. And
You'd like to pull?
I don't think it's complete enough, but I can't remember exactly what I made the motion on, so how I made it. So I'd like to review the tape first.
Okay, so you want to pull
April 28th.
the April 28th meeting minutes specifically from D1?
If you could identify that for us, we can view the tape and make sure we get it right, make sure we get your wording just right. You don't need to do it now.
Right.
But
Okay, any other items to pull?
I'd like to pull D8 and D13.
D8, D13,
D3, D10?
D3, and D10.
And I would like D15, D17, and D18.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the remainder, including the first part, the April 21st meeting minutes from D1?
I move to approve the remainder of the consent calendar, including the minutes from
April 21st.
April 21st.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously for those items that were not pulled. And with that, we will move on to item E1 on the action agenda. This is approval of Santa Barbara Continuation High School and San Marcos Continuation High School bridge programs.
we've had a number of discussions of this, and we pulled the remainder of the discussion from our last agenda so that we could appropriately agendize and label this item. And I will ask Robin Sawaski, our Associate Superintendent, to introduce the item.
Okay, as it says in the background there, the Santa Barbara High School has begun a pilot program this last year, and so Principal Mark Caprito will come up and do the presentation of a template that we would like to also put in place at San Marcos High School. Very similar program there, and Principal Norm Clevenger is here to answer questions about that. In the background piece here, it mentions Dos Pueblos, and Dos Pueblos High School has come together with a team that is looking at a similar kind of program. As you recall, they will not have a continuation high school program separate that belongs to their school because they will retain the La Cuesta continuation school on the Dos Pueblos campus for the Goleta presence. But they also recognize the need for a particular kind of program for students who enter high school very much at risk for being successful in a comprehensive high school. So it's kind of along the same lines, but we are not addressing any kind of program at Dos Pueblos tonight. It's just Santa Barbara High School and the San Marcos High School. So I believe Mr. Caprito's waiting for the PowerPoint to get up.
Well, yeah, I assumed it was going to David, so I brought a copy for him.
Oh, good.
So he's
Great.
putting it on.
Okay.
I know we sent it back and forth a few times.
And
Right.
Dr. Caprito, we have a copy of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So,
I do want to, as long as we're waiting here, I want to address one question about funding down here. It may come up later, and I know at least one board member asked about it. As far as there of course is no fiscal impact to the unrestricted general fund. The continuation programs are funded through the pupil retention block grant. That does come to us as a block. It is in the Tier 3 area this year of flexibility. However, the way the funding comes to the continuation high schools, if we were not using continuation high schools at those sites, the funding from that block grant would be reduced. So, in other words, it's part of the block grant, yes, but we could not use that for that particular reason. We couldn't sweep it and use it for other purposes. That was from Eric Smith. He spoke to me a bit about that today.
Could I ask a question as long as you're talking about funding?
Sure.
It's my understanding that that a certain amount of money per student would go away had the number for Las Alturas not been used. And I've never fully, I talked to some of the CDE and they said it's a formula and hard to say, but maybe $1,200 a student. And I wondered if there's any clarification we could have on that.
Yeah, I'll give you clarification. Actually, the district had 4 CDS codes for 4 different continuation high schools, and the continuation high school was an add-on to the revenue limit. And based on when the continuation high schools were established and the number of students they served in FTEs, generally the add-on was anywhere between $98,000 to $110,000, $112,000 per CDS code. Prior to the advent of AB 825, which was the categorical block grant, CDE had always told us that basically if you reduced or eliminated any of the CDS codes, in effect stopped running the continuation high school, you would lose that amount of money that it was attached to the CDS code. So now that the pupil retention block grant is included in the Tier 3 categoricals, and even though the Tier 3 categoricals has a suspension on the program requirements, in my mind it would revert back to an add-on to the revenue limit, and that rule would still be in effect because it would revert back to old ed code.
I guess, does it revert back to, is it still earmarked, an add-on earmarked for the continuation school, or is it, because it's now into the block grant, it's just, it's fair game, right?
It's unrestricted, but you still have to operate the continuation high school to basically retain that add-on. That's what, I had a conversation with CDE up to about 2 or 3 months ago about this, and they were pretty adamant that if we stopped running a continuation high school CDS code, that amount would be reduced from the pupil retention block grant.
And it gets more confusing to me because while it is block grant money, it's to supplement, not supplant. The supplement, not supplant rule. Is that correct?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Remember, it's unrestricted. All program requirements in Tier 3 are eliminated, so the supplement not supplant rule is no longer in effect.
I thought anything that you got by way of the CONAP was a supplement, not supplant.
A matter of fact, actually, the California Department of Ed is basically now telling us we're going to receipt all of those dollars on the unrestricted side of the budget and will no longer be tracked unless we internally track it with our own unique resource or unique identifiers. It's all coming to us unrestricted.
So now, okay, I'm sorry, I really want to get this clear because I don't want to go around saying things that are incorrect, okay? The money comes in, it's because of the new rules, it's unrestricted funds.
Correct.
It may be used to supplant or to supplement,
Correct.
okay? Is there anything that prevents it from being used for other purposes than the support of the kids in continuation school whose head count bring the money in the first place?
In my mind, the only requirement you have is to continue to operate the continuation high school that's attached to that CDS code. If you do not do that, and let's say we're getting roughly $400,000 and we drop one, we get $300,000. If we drop two, we get $200,000. It's a proportional reduction.
So it sets up an account against which the teachers, for example, and I know I didn't, I asked these questions to Santa Barbara High. I got the impression that they were simply reassigning teachers off the regular teacher roles to teach those courses. Now, will you?
Yeah, what's
will
happening?
you then charge that against?
The dollars have really been kind of institutionalized in the budget, and forgive me because I'm a little sick and I'm not totally command of all my faculties because I went over this with Kathy Abney and Norm and everything. It's rather complex, but there's a consolidation and a decentralization, and the idea is that some proportional share of those dollars should follow the programs to basically assist them. That's a very oversimplified explanation.
I guess my concern is the idea that it's the kids in the continuation school who justify the money, and I would like to feel that they're getting the money, minus some indirect cost charge that you charge on everything.
Yeah, and to tell you the
Is there any
truth,
way to assure that?
yeah, historically, I could not tell you whether there was a one-for-one nexus there. Anyways, generally what happens is that since the origin of the continuation high school add-on was an add-on to the revenue limit was unrestricted, you'd pay your costs, and just like any other add-on, it's dispersed into the great pool of unrestricted general fund dollars. So I don't know if it's ever been a direct one-for-one relationship, meaning all those dollars are going to continuation high school, and I don't have the historical recollection, so I couldn't tell you that.
Well, I guess it's a philosophic issue for me.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you. I didn't want to take.
Okay.
Mr.
Let me
Hearn?
just follow up with the same question, because just so I understand, it's Tier 3 money, so technically it's unrestricted, but if we don't use it for a specific purpose, it goes away.
And I think the reason that still holds is because prior to AB 825, remember, AB 825 was a reform movement that moved a number of categoricals into 6 block grants. This was unrestricted dollars tied to the revenue, and that was the rule in place then. And so when I talked to CDE, I mean, they couldn't give me a good explanation, but that's what I'm theorizing is the explanation. It would revert back to the old rule in Ed Code prior to the advent of the categorical block grant, which is AB 825.
Any other financial questions at this point? All right, let's go ahead.
Get on to program. Mark Caprito.
Okay, thank you. I'm back, and I want to go over this process. There are just a couple of changes in the process that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully I can sort of summarize and provide a little more additional clarity. There's 3 areas that I want to focus on this evening: the requirements for the program, the continuation high school itself, and then a brief summary, which it sort of tailors itself out at the end. It's not like a magic summary, but it is, it's there because it sort of closes things. I want to talk a little bit about the purpose, and I'm not sure we hit that last time regarding this, and I alluded to it I think in a statement. But this continuation school, it really is an option for kids, and this is a little bit of history. It goes back to 1919. It's a diploma program. It's designed to meet the needs of kids. And this says ages 16, and I'm going to clarify that in just a second because that was one of the issues, I think, early on. Who have not graduated, they're not exempt from compulsory education. and they're at risk. And you can, you can read it. I've given you a copy. Nothing has changed since that time. It's amazing. I mean, this is like a 100-year-old event, and we were still doing the same thing for these kids. The one thing that has changed, however, is that the continuation high school, the traditional continuation school, serves students that was 16 years of age. The unique part about this Los Alturas, that is now Santa Barbara Continuation High School, is when it was chartered as a 9-12 program. And I shared this last time, and I think it's critical. It's absolutely critical. There is nothing in high schools. This is a very unique situation that we need to take advantage of. Outside of this district, there are very few that don't have to send, very few districts out there that have a program where, when students are in trouble in grades 9 and 10, end up usually in a court and community setting, because that's all they have. They have a county school system for these kids. Well, we're fortunate to have these sites available for 9th and 10th graders. Otherwise, truly, there's nothing. We're in the process at our schools of doing these interventions, and we've all been to Buffum and we've been to Mohammed, and we're looking at these pyramids of intervention, and we're establishing criteria for these that best fit our needs. Ours would not be the same as San Marcos, would not be the same as Dos Pueblos, or even the junior high schools. They're all unique to the schools. This is one intervention, okay? And to do this, or to be able to do this with kids that are in grades 9 and 10 is really a unique system. Without this, I can share with you, with these kids, we'd be in a lot of trouble. We've looked at already in this group that we're beginning to identify with the junior high school about 81 students who meet the criteria that we need to fill 30 slots. And so we will have to have interventions available for all the other kids. Primary issues are English language arts and math. Well, fortunately, we're moving to Read 180, which we feel will be a tremendous asset in all these programs, and I'll explain where that fits along with this program. So the bottom line is that the original Los Alturas was designed to be a 9-12, and we're very, we're blessed to have that. It is a good thing. Programs and services. This is part of this, information. Oh, what happened? Did I miss? I get excited with these things. Wait.
You were actually running a slide behind yourself, I think. There you go. There you go.
Oh. These apportionment things, I think it changes. It's established. We're not doing money here, but really we're talking about time. And there's a lot of unique industries, but time right now for these kids, there's this paradigm shift in education that I think is critical, that we're all learning. It's more about learning instead of teaching. And where we used to talk about the time that kids would have, quality time, more quality time, to learn. It really is a paradigm shift now is more about student learning. We have given quality instructional time, and learning was never, a constant. It was always a variable. How much did kids learn with no matter how much time we gave them? What we're looking at now is the constant of student learning, and we're reversing that to talk about providing them as much time as it takes. This is a setting that we can provide that for these kids. We're giving a smaller group instruction with a little bit longer period of time to accomplish a task. And we believe the kids can do it once they get past this who can and who won't industry, and I think that's part of what we're up against. For me just to go on and read this, you have it. This program emphasizes all kinds of things. We are working and incorporating these career choices. We're in a pilot program right now with Santa Barbara City College. They're going to provide us, they've already given us the training. We've sent 2 or 3 people out for the career choices program, and it will be an instrumental part of this continuation high school for these kids in grades 9 and 10 as another component. We didn't have that a couple of weeks ago, so this is new. So as an occupational portion, this will be part of the program. Okay, all the students will go through their part.
I guess I don't understand the connection with Santa Barbara City College.
Oh, we have been involved about a month ago through Santa Barbara City College. We were invited to meet with Santa Barbara City College for a pilot program in developing a career choices program at each of the sites. We have taken advantage of that. It will be a dual enrollment class where the kids receive college credit. They will also be exposed to career choices, career opportunities through investigation, through experiences, and through a series of assessments that will be provided for them through the curriculum. So it's a pretty good curriculum. It's been around, I want to say, it's probably been around for over 35 or 40 years, so it's been tailored. It's a little bit more updated now than it used to be when we first recognized it in the late 70s. It's a lot better now than it used to be.
And will these students take those courses?
Yeah, it'll be a course tied into our continuation high school. Those kids will be taking this course. It'll be a 1-hour course for them in grades 9 and 10.
It's called Choices, and the students actually create a 10-year plan. So they really look beyond and, you know, how to work through getting into college and then what they really want to do. And of course, they're not stuck in it, but, you know, those choices. But it's quite a comprehensive plan. And City College was really interested in piloting in this South Coast area. So we were kind of in competition with Carpinteria and other schools. And so Santa Barbara High School is able to pilot this.
Mrs. Deacon, you had a question?
My question was, is it a City College faculty member who comes to the high school campus to teach this?
No, we actually sent 2 or 3 people out to learn this curriculum and to learn the instruction piece of this. And so we'll be doing it with our own staff.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Any questions or concerns? These are all loaded questions when I know when I ask that. The students served, they are voluntary. That was an issue that came up before. These are all voluntary kids. I shared with you at the pilot for the fall that we tried. Those kids were all interviewed. We had kids who chose not to go into the program for reasons that were good reasons. They were losing electives. They didn't have an opportunity to take certain classes that they were already assigned to. They were already 3 weeks into school. They didn't want to leave their classes. There was a whole host of reasons. We ended up with 30 kids, and we ended up again this semester interviewing the kids. But the kids are all interviewed. The parents are interviewed. There's a connection with the teachers that were involved with the program. So it was a kind of a fun experience actually for the kids because we didn't accept everybody either. So it was, you know, it had to be the commitment from the student in order to get into this program. Presently, we're working with the junior high school. We've identified, I said, about 80 plus students, and we're starting to make connections. It will be our counselors. What's really come important is last time Carlos Williams was here. Since I spoke with Carlos and he approached me on the program, we now have 2 other counselors who are interested in working with these kids. And this is just part of what they do. It's not like we're giving them extra money. It's not like they're getting any extra time. But they're going to go down and meet with the junior high school kids and the junior high school counselors so that we can start looking at things like CST scores and student teacher recommendations and previous history on grades. So in that regard, there will be a little bit more one-on-one time spent with kids, where this time we thought we did a pretty good job. I think we'll do better with 3 counselors this time, at least uniquely 3 counselors.
I just want to clarify here. So students are referred on a voluntary or involuntary basis, but accepted only on a voluntary basis.
Yeah, absolutely. They can
Okay.
say no. We have no problem with them saying no. That's not, it's, our attempt right now is to provide them with a little additional help, okay? And we make it pretty clear to them that we want to explain to them exactly what it will do for them, what are the benefits. We also explain the 9-week entry and exit. We believe strongly that they're not going to exit at 9 weeks, but we also believe that at 18 weeks, they're going to be much better prepared. But if they do, in other words, we identify a group of kids who just won't, and we've worked with them and now they will, that's a pretty capable group of kids who just decided not to work. They're in that group. Different than the population of kids who can't, who really need the intervention, and these kids will be identified. So that's a process we have to do through self-assessment in the very beginning of the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Dr. Noel?
I seize upon the same first sentence that Mrs. Parker does, and I don't quite understand the subtlety of the difference between being referred and being enrolled. And I don't what I don't understand is why it says, why it has in a single sentence an or statement where they're mutually exclusive, and where one of them involves a big piece of law. This seems to suggest that it's going to be up to someone to decide whether it is voluntary or involuntary, but it doesn't say anything about the education code's restrictions on involuntary enrollment of people in continuation schools.
I'm not sure what your question is, but this came straight from
My
the straight.
question is-
This is straight from the state of California, CDE.
Yeah, I've read
Yeah.
that wordage on the state website.
I-
I'm asking about Santa Barbara Continuation High School.
Mm-hmm.
Will it enroll students on an involuntary basis?
No, we have no reason to do
Then may we
that.
remove that language, because if we're asked to vote tonight, that's ambiguous.
I believe that's just the referral. The referral would come, like a student might volunteer themselves, I want to be in this, and maybe the involuntary word is confusing there, meaning that a counselor from the from the junior high might refer a student. That wouldn't be considered a voluntary referral. I believe that's what it means. It's just for
Yeah,
the
it's-
referral piece to have those students. Then they would be interviewed, asked if they wanted to be a part of it, and all the enrollment, the acceptance into it would be totally voluntary because it has to be.
And I don't know,
Is-
Dr. Caprito, I can't remember if it's listed someplace else in here that enrollment is completely voluntary, but we could always just add a sentence
Right, it goes
there.
on, but this is not about enrollment. This is about referrals.
Right.
I just want to be clear. This has nothing to do with enrollment. This is about how can kids possibly get, who are the students that are served? And how do they arrive? This is not about enrollment. I mean, I don't understand the clarity, and so I'm trying to help, but I don't see what
I
you're
think
seeing.
Yes.
What's missing is a simple statement after that students are, they're referred. Some walk in the door, some get pushed in the door. But participation is completely voluntary. So that, it's a statement, it's a sentence that by itself doesn't answer Bob's question, Dr. Noel's question. So his question is, even though they've been referred involuntarily, they don't have to do it if they don't want to. They don't have to participate. And so a statement of participation is completely voluntary would amplify that first sentence.
I have no problem with it. I would still go back to saying this is a referral, it's not an enrollment. So anything you want to add to that clarifies that for you, I'm okay with. I don't have any,
Thank
yeah.
you.
It's not a problem.
Mrs. Deacon?
Oh, I was just going to say, well, first of all, we understand, that this is language directly from the state.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that we're necessarily, when we make our decision, voting on the basis that this is state-provided language. We know what our own, I hope we will know what our own program does, but I think we can merely say in our own language that students are referred through a variety of mechanisms.
Would you go so far as to say there shall be no involuntary enrollees?
Oh, absolutely. I'm
You
not
would.
looking
That's-
for people who don't want to be there.
Don't muddy it up.
Yeah.
There shall be no involuntary enrollees in this school.
Yeah, they're,
You'll put that in writing as a matter of public policy that we get to vote on. You're
Well,
comfortable.
we
with
can
that?
make
I
our
just wanna ask, Are
motion.
you comfortable with that?
oh, I'm comfortable with anything. Yeah.
Okay.
I was comfortable with this. Yeah, I can do that.
Or we can do that as we make the motion.
Okay, yeah. Okay? The, part of the results here, and I think these are, again, some of these are statewide information, but it talks about educational services to kids and educational agencies that are dedicated to the continuation high school. But what's unique here, and I think it goes further on the next page than here, but it talks about the continuation high schools and how they're supported by resources. And I think we've talked about that. One thing that we're all going to recognize is that resources are difficult right now. This is tragic. Where we are is tragic. We're essentially trying to do something within a component that already exists, and we will do the best job we can to support that. That's the best we can do. We've talked about this. I know that Eric and I and Robin, we've had conversations about how the dollars are. You know, regardless, we have to put this thing into place. We have kids who need this. There's no doubt about it. And so the resources we understand are going to be minimal. We're not basing our life and we're not basing the program around these resources. That's got to be pretty clear too. So the program, it's ready to go. The last part of this, is that right? Okay. Talks about the continuation high school in terms of the services, but without them, without the devotion of some money. We know that, and the same as it is without the devotion of people. This program doesn't go anywhere. It just is something that people talk about. We have a pretty interested group, and I know that Mark presented a good program from Dos Pueblos and has had a video and talked about the kids. The kids who have gone through this part this year really experienced something, unique that the other kids didn't. But I'm going to share with you that equal to that experience, we had our Distinguished Dawn ceremony today out in front of school. And that's a whole different population of kids, but they also experienced something unique at Santa Barbara High School. And they're at a little different level than these kids. They're all the same grades, but they're a little different level. And our goal is to make sure that kids at all ages, kids at all levels of ability have something that they can grab a hold of. And this is one of those programs. The beauty of this is they get to leave when they want to. They can leave once they're in, and they're not comfortable with this. Once they're in, and they're finding out the level of success so that they can matriculate into a normal high school and receive a positive experience with that, I think you'll see a turnaround with this. And that's really what we're hoping for. So we know that the financial piece has got to be there, but we've got to do what we've got to do. We're not shy about saying that. Norm might be. You guys are okay. The accountability indicators, a little different, that we didn't talk about accountability last time. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the ASAM reports, but I would like just to briefly go through them because this could take a long time. This whole notion of ASAM, we're going to, we got to pick some areas, and we're going to probably pick 3 areas that we can really focus on, things that we know where we can make a difference with kids. It doesn't mean we're not going to try for all of them, but if you look at them, it talks about the framework and it talks about the indicators. They're selected by us. That's the beauty of the ASAM. We're really able to look at our target population. The reason for that is because not all target populations require the same thing. They don't all come, it's not one size fits all in these programs. And so this report that we have to do, and these reports, Kathy will probably attest to this, they're not the easiest reports to do. They're not the most fun to do, but statistically, you get a chance to see where you are with these programs, and they're actually, when you combine them with what we do, it's a lot more work for us. This isn't a secret. It is a lot more work, and I think we need to be aware of that. The criteria that they use.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You want to go back?
No, I'm
Oh.
happy to go ahead. I was waiting for that.
Okay. The indicators are 4 that the state has come up with. There are 4 primary sets of criteria, and I will show you here what the accountability ones are. The ASAM accountabilities. There's improved behavior, suspension, punctuality, sustained daily attendance, student persistence. I think that's a kind of a unique one. Attendance, writing achievement, reading, and math. And really, with our focus in English language arts and math, and people trying to get to school, really our focus has got to be put there. We did have, fortunate enough, the highest for ourselves this year with the Casey census has been the highest it's been in years at that school. And so we think we're moving along the right path. But I also believe that with this kind of a program in English language arts and math that are tailored to these kids, that we'll do well. This is where the Read 180 comes in. Our primary program for these kids is going to be Read 180, okay, where the other kids will be going through it at a little different pace. Yeah.
Dr. Noel?
How are math and reading going to be measured?
We're going to start with baseline assessment, and
what?
We'll have some baseline assessments, and particularly we'll use with the reading, we're going to use Read 180, so the kids will receive an assessment in Read 180. And the math, we're going to start looking at some benchmark assessments that we currently use in the district based on algebra readiness.
Is there any third-party testing for reading and math other than not done by the school's own people?
Well, it's not about having it done by the school's own people because we're using a third-party resource. We're going to be using Read 180. We're also going to be using release test questions.
The reason I ask is because these schools are so small that the California Standards Test scores are not reported except on 1 or 2 measures. And the enrollment's too small, as you know the rule about reporting. And so there's no way to assess student achievement systematically, no systematic way to assess student achievement for the kids in this school. In Santa Barbara High School, they're assessed, and it's reported. And we can look at the subgroups. Can't look at it here.
And
Now,
maybe,
I understand you're saying, we'll do it. Okay, and I'm saying, good accountability doesn't entrust you to do it. It has someone else do it.
and maybe I'll have Dr. Hayden chime in here because while it's not reported for school-wide, surely there are enough students for us to get the information on the CSTs and the KC on a local, a district level.
That's right. We actually get the scores on the CSTs, each student actually. So if it would be a third party, the Read 180 is a third party too. So if they wish to get those scores, we could do some summary scores. I would not publish them if they're less than a certain cell count, but we can internally look at them.
Yeah, I have them for several years here for all of our continuation schools, and particularly in 10th grade, 9th grade, there's hardly any continuation schools seem to have 9th grade students. But in 10th grade, there are more asterisks. That's the sign that there are too few entries
Well,
in the
and
cell.
I think that we would need to.
Of course, I'm using a public data source now.
Right.
Yes, I actually have the scores.
Which I think has a certain amount of merit, using a public data source, the public school.
With the exception that those kids weren't counted, and I think, Davis, you're able to get those, right?
Yeah,
individual
we
scores.
actually have the scores on them, but they're
I
not going to
understand
show
that.
up publicly because, like you just said, because of the low data count.
So then, but if we can't make them public, then this board can't consider them in public. We're a public body.
Well,
Is that correct?
go ahead, Dr. Hayden.
I suspect that's correct, that we can't actually talk about them in
It's
terms
not
of.
closed session business.
No.
Can't talk about it there.
But wouldn't that only be if there were fewer than 10 students at that grade level?
He's asking about the subgroups, and it depends on how large this population is going to be as to whether we can do this. I'd have to talk to Mark about the size and the number of students, so.
Okay.
Well, I'm concerned we're at the design step, where I guess you already did it. You already have a school running. But we as the board are just getting into this. And I'm concerned that there be some kind of objective, not in-house accountability measurement for reading and math particularly.
We have, and it may not satisfy everybody because I understand your interest, but I also understand what works for us and for our kids. And we use a benchmark assessment every 9 weeks for our kids in every core subject. And our benchmark assessments are developed from released CST questions. So we believe we're on the right track. Second, students who are at grade level at 9 weeks will have an option to leave. Now, that's not the issue here, but it's one measure that we would have to use to feel as though the student was successful enough to migrate back into the traditional setting. One of the things that I think is critical here is that while we're not all being asked to use benchmark assessments, I think that's a direction that schools are going to be moving in the very near future. And so to be able to trust that information with those assessments is probably a good thing if we start now, because this stuff isn't stuff we make up. This is stuff that we do pull off, and they are standards-based questions. So we would have a pretty reliable system in place if, in fact, we were using release test questions from all of our CSTs, which is essentially what we're doing. So when we're asked to give benchmark assessments, if we're not going to do it on a true basis, I couldn't imagine anybody asking us to do them. So what I'm hearing from other districts, from other superintendents, and from other schools is that the development of benchmark assessments is primarily based on release CST questions for the sole purpose of identifying where kids are in the moment. And in that moment, if they're tested at 9, 18, and 27 weeks, we would have a pretty good idea about a profile for that student on the CSTs. That's the way it's supposed to work. Outside of any third-party testing, I think that's pretty good.
Okay, moving on.
The, next slide. There are some alternatives emphasized here. Student and performance measures should be based upon multiple indicators, and this is what we're doing. We're putting all of this together and we're triangulating all of our work so that we can come up with a profile of our particular student population. We're also looking at the indicators to measure to see what kind of changes in readiness they have. And again, these go back to particular areas of math and English language arts. Okay, and this bottom one I thought was kind of fun. The school's performance should not be compared with that of other schools, but rather its own performance over time. This is about a 9, 18, and 27 week process that I think we need to be encouraged about with these kids. And it's one way to make sure that this happens. Some concerns that we've had over the past, this is an interesting statistic that we've seen. 100 at-risk freshmen have been advanced to Santa Barbara High School each fall. And this is not just, I tease John a lot, but this isn't just from Santa Barbara Junior High School. These are kids that come in from all kinds of places, including a lot of inter- and intra-district transfers. And we checked ours. I think we're about 175 kids, and they're coming from as far south as Camarillo, Santa Paula, Oxnard, Ventura, migrating this way from Carpinteria. We get them from Lompoc and Santa Maria. We're getting kids from everywhere. And so this really does affect our population, and we're working with these kids. But we've gotten about 100 kids each fall. According to our data, we're going to receive about 85 at-risk freshmen during this school year. The DF list right now continues to climb each year. We need to do something about this DF list, and we have some interventions in place for the fall that we feel are going to be beneficial for our kids. They may not like it, but they're going to be beneficial. There's also a few interventions in place for at-risk students in grades 9 and 10 that we're working on in terms of this pyramid. Everything from counseling to tutorial systems to a Saturday tutorial for the kids where they're able to come, not because they're in trouble, but because we feel it's in their best interest. So again, it's a design, and it is in design.
There was one sentence at the bottom of that I'd like to ask a question about.
Mm-hmm.
There are few interventions in place for at-risk students in grades 9 and 10.
Yeah, there are very few.
Among the few, what are they?
Well, there are few. One of them is, the standard detention or their Saturday schools or things like that that are really more punitive in nature right now that we've inherited, and that's got to change. Okay, it can't always be about getting somebody in trouble or being in trouble because I didn't do my work. So we're migrating next year to a mandatory tutorial for kids after school who have received a D or an F or have not done homework. They're going to have a 7th period tutoring center class where they're going to be able to go in and they'll stay until we receive information that they're actually completing their work and assignments. We're also going to have tutors involved, and that'll be 4 areas. We're hoping 4 areas after school. We're also having, right now, we're using our Saturday school for that. We have 3 different sessions on Saturday, 2 in English language arts and 1 in world history or social studies, where the students right now are being assigned. And they're being assigned primarily by assistant principals, not necessarily because the kids are in trouble, but as an offset of doing Saturday school. This type of Saturday school allows them to focus in an area of what we consider concern. So we'll pick a subject where they have some trouble, and they can go to 2 courses during the course of a Saturday. So they're there for 4 hours. We're trying to find a better way to use our time.
We had a conversation about a year ago in your office, you'll recall, and I asked you about an at-risk program. You have 2 at-risk programs on your campus. They're called California Partnership Academies. And I asked you how many at-risk students were in those programs. And my recollection is that you had precious few. And according to the data that I've seen, that corroborates that. I'm wondering why you've now identified
Bless you.
85 at-risk kids. Why are you not putting them into California Partnership Academies? The state provides funding for that, the district matches the funding, and the community matches the funding.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, but that probably, at this particular point in time, is not something that I'm prepared to discuss right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The other issues that we have, at-risk students are not successful in the comprehensive environment. Many lack the coherent academic background. There's few positive academic role models for some of these kids. In the school and districts, we're just losing students. I heard a comment the other day from a person trying to recruit one of our kids, and his comment, I think, is one of the most powerful I've ever heard. He said, if he doesn't get up here, we're going to lose him. And I was thinking selfishly that the school's going to lose him. And he stopped to tell me, this isn't about the school. This is about your community, and this is about the kid. And when you think about it, globally, that's that's powerful. It's huge. It is. Everybody loses this kid, and we all lose if this kid doesn't make it. So I think that we need to look a little bit deeper and start looking at a few more of these kids. But this whole notion of success and identifying success, it isn't always about A's, B's, and C's. It sometimes is about small pieces that have to be celebrated, and I think that's really what we're looking for in this school. We know that the Read 180 program, we've heard a lot about it, and I've used it at other schools. And to be able to take a kid and move them up 2 or 3 grade levels, especially when they enter our school with like 4th and 5th grade reading, and we're asking them to do a 12th grade physics class, I'm not sure that's fair. And we've made some other adjustments at our school to actually move that class away based on math readiness. Well, the kids can't read the book and they can't do the math. We're not giving them the class. And so I think those are some strides that we're trying to make for our kids in their best interest. So we're not at a one-size-fits-all. We're really starting to tailor our school to meet the needs of the kids at a particular readiness level. So they'll enter math classes, they'll enter science classes based on a readiness that has been identified by them. And we'll have some other discussions with the parents if they're not totally comfortable. I gave you a couple of things. These are some of the eligibility that we talked about last time. D's and F's, deficient below grade level, things that we've talked about, poor CST scores in grade 7. Keep in mind, we're moving along in this class before we get CST results back. I mean, we're finishing our master schedules right now. All of us are doing it, and it's really kind of it's kind of a pain because we have a year-old data to use, and that's really a shame. But it is as close as we can get, and it's usually pretty consistent. It's not that we're going to see dramatic increases in a student over year to year. They tend to do the same. Our goal is to make sure that same gets a little bit stronger each year, so that they become a little bit more powerful student. The teacher recommendation, we're going to meet with the junior high principal and counselors. I think we've discussed this, and we're going to have some parent and student interviews. Grades 10 and this should be 10 and 11. Grade 10, I'm sorry. This is because we have this. Essentially the same thing, but remember, these are our kids. these kids they're with us right now. And we have most of their data. We're able to identify those kids. And so we're scheduling meetings with those families so that we can meet. One of the things that we've been able to see, though, are attendance and discipline histories that we don't have outside this area. You know, we don't often get that until later. We can roll in and find out, but we have it on site with our students, and it makes it a little bit easier. The one thing that I found is that when we interviewed these kids last year, we interviewed about 200 kids last year who had not done well in the KC. And one of the things they were talking about was, you know, things like class sizes, the class moves on, people finish things, and they quit just because everybody else quits, and that's amazing. And they like the smaller environment, and the kids will tell us that. They're much more comfortable in a smaller environment. We tested them that way this year, and I think I think it helped. We tested them last year, and I think it helped also. Grades 11 and 12, these are a little different. We're going to do essentially what Kathy does.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the previous page, yes, you have a 35-to-1. You say students don't perform well in a traditional academic environment, 35-to-1, 6 periods a day. What's class size do you have over there now for Santa Barbara Continuation High School?
Well, right now in the continuation, it'll be 30-to-1.
30-to-1.
Yeah,
And
assuming we get 30.
And how long is the day?
The day on that right now is going to be between 4 and 5 periods. If we add the choices program, it'll be 5 periods.
Okay. So you're basically going down from 35-to-1 to 30-to-1, and from 6 periods a day to 5 periods a day?
Well, keep in mind that the English class is an hour and a half long, and the math class is an hour and a half long.
No, I'm just trying to get the net change.
Well, it's the net change can't be solved that way because you're not going 1-to-1. If you had a math class that was an hour long and 30-to-1, it's not the same as a math class that goes an hour and a half with 30 students. So we're lengthening part of the time. So the kids will be doing different type of instruction in the classes as well. So some of the kids, for example, in math, will be doing a little bit more indirect instruction. Those are the kids that we've identified who have the ability but don't necessarily need all the help that the teacher can provide. On the other hand, we'll have small group settings in that same classroom where the kids will be able to work in groups of 5 to 10.
Mrs. Deacon?
And I just want to reinforce, it's my understanding, these are the same students that are together all the time, correct? They're not moving from class to class
Yeah.
and mixing with a wide variety of other kids. They're focused, they're working together as a
Yeah.
group.
They're focused for 4 hours. My concern, and I'm going to be frank, my concern is keeping them together for 5 hours because I want them out for 2 periods a day. My choice right now is to look at how this Choices program fits and decide whether that's the program we operate or we provide health and world history based on the grade level. I would like to see them out for 2 periods with the normal population and in a cohort that is different than what they see 4 periods a day.
What happens if, say they finish a 9-week cycle and you determine they're ready to move back into the general population? Isn't there a difficult transition there if they re-enter a class that's, have they missed content in the meantime and they're coming back into a class that they haven't been in?
The 2 core classes they'd be coming back into would be English, language arts, and math, and they wouldn't move unless they were at grade level, so performing equal to their peers in a traditional setting.
I'm just thinking about continuity of assignments and reading and all that. I mean, there's got to be a bit of a disconnect there from the other
There's
classes.
always a disconnect when you change classes because the classes are structured a little differently. Some of these kids, what I found, they don't want to go. They truly just don't want to leave. They're comfortable in this environment. It's one of the few that they felt success. We'll probably have better luck moving kids at the semester than the 9 weeks. That's why I'm saying it's typically an 18-week program. If a student is at grade level, has decided I've had enough, I want back in the regular classrooms, they're free to go. And they'll be able to make that decision based on what they do. It's not unique. This is the same system I ran when I ran the county schools.
How
the
many-
kids had
how
to
many
come and
have
go.
Yes,
moved.
Dr. Noel?
I'm sorry?
How
Dr.
many
Noel?
have moved?
Well, we haven't started yet. We won't start until the fall.
Well, I thought you've been operating all this year.
Not in this environment.
Oh, have you moved anybody back to the main?
Yeah, we had at the semester, they all moved out.
At
the
grade
semester.
level?
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you if they were all at grade level, but they all moved back, and we picked up a new 30 students.
Did I read correctly that this is it's a 9-week program?
Well, it's a 36-week program. It's based on 9-week segments.
Okay, and people, did I read correctly that there's a limit on how long they're going to be there?
No, there's a limit on how long they can be there.
What is that?
They can choose to exit if they're at grade level at 9 weeks. They can choose to exit at grade level at at 18 weeks, and they can choose to exit at the 27th week. And then, of course, the 36th week, we would graduate.
And that's the limit?
That's all there is. There isn't any more.
I think what Dr. Noel is asking is, if they're not at grade level at the end of one school year, will they be in the same
The following year,
program, or
they
do
could come back in grade 10. Yeah, this is, what we found, and I think it's important, is that some of these kids don't want to go. It's not because of grade level. They will, some of these kids will reach grade level. Let's assume for all intents and purposes that they don't, and we have kids who don't. We do. We have a program that's set up for 4 years. This is a continuation high school, and we have a little different setting in grades 10 and 11 that may very well suit the students' needs, and we feel strongly that providing a smaller class size for even 4 years is not a bad thing for some kids. They choose to come into this program. I have kids right now that would choose to go to Kathy's school if she had room. I mean, even today, they would go. They would prefer that. They like the environment.
Now, my question is a
Yes,
little
Dr.
different.
Noel?
Okay.
My question is, I hear you saying that you're going to move people. I heard the description of who they are when they come in, okay? And then I hear you saying that in 9 weeks, some of them are going to be at grade level. Or at 18 weeks, some of them are going to be at grade level. I've been reading as much as I can about interventions and about state norms for interventions. And it seems to me that that is unrealistically short. That you can take people who are over 2 years behind grade level, and in 9 weeks, bring them up to grade level? Nah. 18 weeks, bring them up to grade level? The norm that the CDE talks about is 1 full year of intervention in 2 hours of block time rather than an hour and a half, producing at best 2 years of improvement. So if you got kids coming in there who are, say, in math at 5th grade level, and by all signs you will, I don't know how you can imagine, how you can envision getting them out of that program in the time frame that you're talking about. It just doesn't. That doesn't register with everything I've been reading.
I'm not here to debate with you, but I have a group of kids who
Well,
may or may not.
Can you cite a program that has a track record
Yeah,
like that?
what I'm offering to you is I'm just responding to your question. I'm not in disagreement with you. I know the difficulty here, and I think we all know the difficulty. So what you're saying or suggesting, I think most of us have a pretty good handle on. I will offer that in a reading program, for example, they recommend 3 hours of reading for a grade level that they're lower after the 3rd grade. Well, we can't offer that at high school. We can't give 3 hours of reading to a kid that comes into us below grade level. So what we do is the best we can with the student, and if they are not making it, we will keep them in the program. If they do make it, and I have a strong belief that there are kids who will make it, those are the kids who just refuse to do the work. So what you're citing is great. I appreciate all that citing and all the reading. But I haven't heard yet the difference between the kids who can't and the kids who won't. That piece is missing for me. And I would love to have that information, because there's a significant difference between the kids who can't and the kids who won't.
And that's a distinction, Madam President, that I have on my list to ask him.
Yes, Dr. Noel.
In all of my reading in 10 years of public education literature, I've never heard the distinction between kids who can and kids who won't.
You know, we spent 2 full days on it in a conference just about a month and a half ago with Buffum and with Mohammed, and it was a pretty good conversation identifying those students. The key for us is that we have to find out who they are, because you know what, I want to share something.
What does it mean? I mean, what does it mean?
It means that it means, and I'm not sure where the difficulty is here. We have a group of students who just refuse to do the work. I'm not sure how long it's been, and I truly mean this with all respect, how long it's been since you've been in a K-12 classroom. We have actually got kids out there who don't want to work, but they're quite capable of doing the work. We also have kids out there that just can't do the work. They just are not able to do the work. One of our jobs, and again, this may be new, one of our jobs is to seek out why. We spend a lot of time with that. We spend a lot of time trying to seek out what is it about this student that prevents them from acquiring the information. One of our biggest problems is that we continue in a rote learning model, something that was established over 100 years ago. We keep using in schools, right? It's been a long time. And we found out that differentiated instruction, that indirect instruction, that independent study, all of these things, something targets these kids. One of our jobs is to find out what fits. Nobody said this was easy. In fact, it's terribly challenging. For us to do what we were trying to do, this is not an easy task.
I just wanted to give you an example that may come to point what you're talking about there. I was a teacher for 17 years, and I spent 15 of those years in alternative schools as a teacher and a counselor. And I'm looking at starting the program at San Marcos High School with freshmen who come to us at risk, and what we need to do to identify those. And we took the two of the main criteria that we have here, which are their DNF lists, and we also looked at the CST scores and the kids that were below basic and far below basic in math and English language arts. You might think that those two groups of kids would be the same. They're not. Of the list that we had, and I think we had 62 kids that were far below basic or below basic in math and English language arts. When you look at the transcripts for those kids, they're getting B's and C's in their 8th grade classes. They're functioning in a regular junior high school classroom. When you look at the DNF list, about the same size, a little bit more, those kids are a lot of basic kids. Only 6 of the kids on the list that I'm looking at right now are below basic and far below basic. So those kids are coming to us with histories of D's and F's. They're at risk for not being successful here, and the issue for a lot of them is not that they can't, because their scores show they can. It's that they won't and they don't. And that's what these programs are for. It's a way to identify with kids, a way to give them a different environment where they're not in competition with everybody in the school, they're in competition with their own learning and their own self. And that's why you see criteria up here that talk about discipline and attendance and coming to school on time and being there every day. And those are successes for them, because up till now they have not had those successes.
Thank you, Mr. Clevenger. Dr. Caprito, is there anything else that we needed to go over before we open it up for a little bit more board discussion?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think we pretty well covered it, and we covered it last time as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, do we have public comment on E1?
Just had to verify these were E1s. Edna Frujillo, followed by Jacqueline Inda, followed by Gonzalo Rios.
Okay, my name is Edna Trujillo, and I'm a parent from a junior at Santa Barbara High School. And also I'm the president of ELAC, and I feel responsible to get more information to discuss this with the parents. The parents of those students that will be the people that will be in this academy, and their future is these 4 years are going to be important to determine what is going to be their future as adults. So the first thing that I would like to ask, because this is new for me, I just want to tell you the way that I knew about this academy. And it was when a parent called me and she said that his son was recommended to be in a new academy. And I thought that they were talking about the VARA or the MAD Academy. We didn't have any information that this pilot was running in the beginning of the year. So I was so happy for this parent, and I said, well, that's great. It was recommended for one of the academies, the ones that I knew. But it wasn't like that. It was totally the opposite. So when we knew the truth, it was really shocking. I don't know what were the guidelines to recruit these children or these kids in the first semester for the academy. I didn't understand, lack of information. We have meetings every month, and we have the EL students, and I'm sure that in between those EL students, we have different levels of students, high risk students too. We never got informed as a group about these situations. But on the other hand, we were informed about the VARA and the MAR Academy as an opportunity there. So if this is an opportunity, it should be informed in a group. And also, we as ELAC are responsible to give some advice to the school, to the principal, to the board.
30 seconds.
In our opinion. So we didn't have this text to analyze it and to give any input from the parent point of view. And also, my question is, if this is a voluntary issue, I mean, the way that they are recruiting these kids, the kids are minors, so the parent should be having a decision about this and more informed.
Thank
And
you.
as a group, we need to discuss it, not a single way. Thank you.
Jacqueline Inda, followed by Gonzalo Rios.
Okay, I have a series of questions. My name is Jacqueline Inda, and I am here as the representative of an organization in town called Esperanza dealing with youth violence. My number one question is age. I'm not sure what the legalities are for continuation schools to have that age requirement of 16. And when you actually look at 9th and 10th, 14 and 15 is not actually equal out to 16. The next question is kids who can't and kids who won't. Kids who can't should be tested for special needs services. And kids who won't needs to restructure within the schools. Our responsibility as a school in any function is to keep the kids succeeding within the school and not transfer them to a continuation program. And it may seem like it is a school inside of a school, but documentation 10 years from now is the only thing that counts. And 10 years from now, a child will have graduated from a continuation school and not from a regular high school. Okay, let's see. Another question. Testing. When you're talking about testing and you're talking about maybe the second year of a school that's sanctioned, where does that testing go? Into the continuation school for documentary purposes, that's where it goes. So how does that affect that second year of sanction? And the other question is a little bit more of a legal kind of question. At a second year sanction, schools are supposed to be able to provide tutoring for those students. You have certain rights as parents and students to be able to qualify as a second year sanction, as Santa Barbara High School is. When you transfer into a continuation school, you legally no longer have those rights. So the tutoring and things that the parents could access can no longer be provided to them because then now they're actually in a different school setting. Let's see. Gonna cut down my questions to a couple of little less questions. Let's see. Okay. I think that I'll end, since I'm pretty close to ending, just by saying one more thing. Lifelong success is in terms when you graduate from high school and what you develop into. And it is so hard to develop into anything when your high school diploma says continuation school. And a lot of kids feel that pressure and know that. And they may not understand it when they're in high school. They may not understand the difference of being segregated into a continuation school within a campus. But as they grow up, they'll realize the differences. And that's our responsibility that we could have fixed. It is our responsibility to take care of kids within the schools.
Thank you. Gonzalo Rios.
Hi, my name is Gonzalo. Well, I just want to comment something on Mr. Caprito said that some of the students, they just want to be in a group and just be in one small group and not go on and graduate from high school. But for me as a graduate from La Cuesta, I graduated from La Cuesta, I always felt that I never belonged there. Why? Because I always wanted to graduate from high school, regular high school. And most of my friends that I know right now, they'd rather graduate from high school instead of from La Cuesta or from a different school. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't know where he got this idea where kids rather stay in one group and not move on with their, high school diploma. I'd rather have a high school, regular high school diploma than a graduation diploma. But I guess, I don't know. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members?
Well, maybe this is an opportunity to clarify a few things that we just heard, because I think that they don't necessarily reflect the program as it's being presented to us. First of all, I think it's only 9th and 10th graders, so that am I right, that these students will then go back into the regular 11th and 12th grade and would get a high school diploma at the
Well,
end?
no.
Is that incorrect?
As Dr. Caprito just presented, it is also 11th and 12th, but I think the key thing is that it's all completely voluntary, so it is not, it's not credit recovery in that sense, but it's strictly only if students want to stay in the continuation high school program when they stay. You absolutely may come back up to the podium, Dr. Caprito.
There's probably a couple of points. One is the whole notion of graduating, if I can work backwards, I would prefer to do that. The program is a 9 through 12, the school's a 9 through 12 school. What people perhaps are missing is that there is a time when moving a student becomes to their advantage because there'll be a dropout. And it's unfortunate. In today's market, it really has changed, because if a student does not graduate within his 4-year or her 4-year period of time, there's no such thing as a 5th-year senior anymore. They just don't exist, because they start to count against the school as a dropout. And that's because they started recalculating the dropout rate a year ago. So anybody who doesn't make it has a serious problem. That's a statistic, okay? And we are either in or we're out, and that's not, it's neither here nor there. Our goal is to provide an opportunity for students to graduate with their class. That's one of our first criteria. And what we try to do, and the word may better be used by coaching, we try to work with the students to help them determine the best course to make that happen. We're not entertaining 5th-year seniors. We're just not entertaining a 5th-year senior. We prefer to have that student graduate with their class, and we will do everything in our power to make that happen. And by the time the student reaches their 10th or 11th grade year, 2 things happen. Number one is they're on a road to credit recovery because somewhere they just messed up. Something happened. And oftentimes, Kathy helps us. We send them to Kathy, and they come back in their senior year ready to go. That's a guarantee. The other guarantee we have from Kathy is, and we just did this, students that came back at the semester and were not prepared to graduate, we have a nice arrangement with Kathy. She's guaranteed to take those kids back. Why? So they can get the credit they need to graduate on time. So it's deeper than what the 3 conversations that just came out, so much deeper than that. These are conversations that we have. Our primary goal is the students. So when a student is able to leave in the 9th or 10th grade, we're for it. Once they've reached that age and they can matriculate into a normal system, we think that's wonderful. Assuming they have the opportunity to stay, we think that's great. If they don't, and Kathy is full, we have a continuation option for our kids that we didn't have otherwise, because there are times when she's full and can't take the kid. And what most of you don't recognize is we have a number of kids that way, and we have 3 high schools. And some of those kids then get further and further behind. That's the problem. One of the concerns we have is by not having these schools or additional placements for these students, they don't graduate. So the person who said we want to keep them in a group, no, our goal is to get them back into the main system to graduate with their class. We do whatever we can to make that happen. Students have an option always to come back, assuming they're prepared in their senior year. Second, the population of students about receiving a diploma. Some of the kids choose to receive the diploma from the continuation high school. It has nothing to do with the diploma. It has to do with the measurement of success. These are students that we deal with every day. So I'm not sure where everybody's, I know the kids I deal with. And the comments about discussion with the program itself in terms of talking or being acknowledged, my concern about the comment that was stated was that somebody said coming to an academy. It verifies the fact that we did have conversations with the parents. It's painfully obvious that parent didn't give the same information to this person that we gave to her, because that wasn't the message. It was deemed an academy. We're not calling it an academy. It was just an academy was the original name, and that may be where you heard it, Dr. Noel. And we can't call it opportunity. We don't use that context in continuation high schools. You just don't use it. It is truly a continuation high school, and it's an option for kids. Okay?
Any other brief comments, questions?
Mine,
Heron?
mine goes to cost. I mean, what is the projected cost of these 2 programs individually? I mean, what is your budget for this program, and is it fully funded by these unrestricted but mandatory funds?
In meeting with Kathy Abney and the other principals, we're looking at what they needed was extra sections for their teachers to be able to do this. So we're looking at roughly $50,000.
Over and above the pupil grant, or?
It's reallocated. I mean, it's using the pupil retention block grant, which is the money, I mean, the grant that has the continuation high school.
So we're not encroaching into real unrestricted money.
The best way to say it is there's no new cost because basically you have a consolidation of LaQuesta and we're reallocating the excess dollars that went to LaQuesta previously to follow these two programs.
And now, you've had a pilot program this year, but now this is a totally different new pilot program?
The program itself.
Dr. Caprito, maybe you could use a mic.
The program is new. Yeah, it's a different design. Last year's design was to work primarily with the kids, to identify the kids, to find out strengths and weaknesses, what we could do. And we did provide them with a world history course and a health course, physical education. The target right now, once we were able to get into the program, and keep in mind that we started this thing in a hurry. Okay, I'll be frank, there was not a lot of time given to make this thing go. We've had about 6 months to work on how we wanted to see it operate in a more, a better design, a much better design. So we know where the areas of strength and weakness are. We're using data. We understand math and English language arts are the two most critical areas we need to work with. That's our focus for the school. That's our primary focus. The other focus, will be the career and or the health and world history program that will operate with it.
Okay. Is it wise to have two pilot programs the same year? I mean, are you both going to be doing the identical thing, or are you both on your own track doing your own thing?
We've patterned a lot of what we've done. We're starting just with freshmen for next year. That's our case identity and where we're going to get started once this passes. We have lists of kids that we're going to work with the middle schools on identify and then invite their parents and the students in and have conversations about what we have to offer them. That's the pilot that we have, but a lot of it is patterned after what Mark has shown you here. The focus is a little different because obviously we're on a block schedule and we're looking at 2 alternate periods of math and English, and the particular impetus is at finding the right teachers to relate to those students, and those freshmen then will be in our regular health and PE and RISE programs in the afternoon. Our intent is also to keep them eligible to play sports or the band or any of the other things in the school that they choose to. So they're going to be 4-period-a-day students at San Marcos, as all freshmen are.
Now, do you have your own continuing?
We have our own number, yes.
You have your own number. And one more for Mark. I heard many times that if they're at grade level, they can leave at 9 weeks, 18 weeks, 36. What if they're not at grade level? Can they still leave if they want to?
They can leave.
Okay.
We would, I have a theory about keeping kids in programs that we try to best fit their needs, and so I would coach them to staying. They're free to go. Most of those kids, we know that, and this is something over, 30 years of dealing with these kids, and in and out of continuation systems. About 85% of the kids who come back to a traditional setting go back to continuation high school. That's basically the information that I have. About 85%. That's a lot of kids that go back. The 15% who make it have really worked hard and have dedicated that senior year to making it with us in traditional settings. The other kids, they really prefer to stay. Some of them come back and they just, we're asking them, what's different for you today? What is different? What's going to make this setting better for you? It's a system that wasn't working for you, and you left a system that you felt was broken. What is better for you today? How do you feel about this system today? And, we ask them these questions. And, what kids tell me at Santa Barbara High School, I want to walk down the hill. That's their sole motivation. And that's good enough for me. They can stay. And they do.
They can stay
in our school. They come back from Kathy's, and I ask them, what's here? And the biggest thing at that school is walking down the hill. It's huge, absolutely huge. And if there's no other motivating factor for these kids, it's that. Other kids want to play football. I mean, you'd be surprised at the answers we get. And they stay. They work hard to stay. If we don't ask them the question and we just take them back, then we're not doing a service for them and we're not doing a service for Kathy, because she's ultimately going to get them back again. And they're going to be actually short units.
Thank you.
Any other
I had
quick
a
comments?
factual
Dr.
question, I want to make
Dr.
some
Noel?
comments. What is the math program you've adopted for this course?
Right now we're looking at what we use for our KC prep courses in math.
For the what?
Our KC prep courses. It's a curriculum that we've designed for the students. And it's supposed to, it is designed to pre-test.
Does it use a publisher's product?
There's not a lot of
Like a
published
book?
product. Yeah, we use a state-released, we have a state book that comes out yearly, and we start with that as ancillary material, and we also use a state textbook, the algebra textbook that we use. But we're primarily focused on the readiness portion out of the released book that the state provides.
What algebra book is that?
Oh, I can't even remember now. We have about 3 of them. I have no idea.
I assume it's the one that we just approved.
Yeah, it's the one we just adopted books.
Are you using a state-approved?
Oh, yeah,
A
absolutely.
state-approved mathematics
Yeah.
intervention program?
No, not an intervention
Are you
program.
using a state-approved algebra readiness program? I'll be very precise.
We don't use algebra readiness in high school. It has 3 standards.
But these kids are 2 or more years behind grade level.
But still, we don't use it because they don't get credit for it.
Okay. All right, you answered my question.
Dr.
I
Noel?
have some comments. I don't hear anything that requires a continuation school format. I hear a program that can operate in a high school, and should, in my opinion, should operate in a high school, except one thing, money. And I find that deeply troubling, because what I see driving this process is holding on to money that otherwise will be lost. Not an educational rationale. In fact, it looks as though this has grown like Topsy, from a little idea that we'll rush into place. And why rush? Because if we don't rush, we're going to lose the money. And we haven't, that's why when I've asked, I've not been able to get anything in writing until tonight. No real planning, nothing that could be shared with parents, shared with stakeholders, and no participation. So I find that very troubling. You say it's strictly voluntary. I would really like to know what was said in those interviews with those parents. For example, were they told that they had a right to go to Santa Barbara High School? Were they told that they had a right to go to Dos Pueblos High School? Were they told that they had a right to go to San Marcos High School? Were they told that the district was legally obligated to pay their transportation to either Dos Pueblos or San Marcos High School? That flows from Santa Barbara High School's status as a program improvement school. One of the speakers made a comment on another implication. Were they told that that starting in the fall, when Santa Barbara High School is in year 2 of program improvement, that they would be legally entitled to private tutoring? And when you put all that together, say in Santa Barbara High School, we could send our kid to Dos Pueblos, San Marcos, not going to cost us anything, and in addition, we can get a private tutor. I wonder without that information, what it means to say that these people chose voluntarily. They didn't have the relevant information. Were they told that Santa Barbara Continuation High School is not WASC accredited? That's interesting and relevant. And so I'm very concerned that by omission, the message to these parents was very misleading. Let me just browse through here so I can get quickly to my point. I'm concerned about what I take to be, I don't see any mention of this, but I read this in the literature that for the kids who are scoring far below basic, and I hear this from some of our principals also, incidentally, they may be special ed kids, students with disabilities. And yet I don't see any mention in here that there's not even a pre-referral process to see that these kids are assessed for possible learning disabilities. And I think that's utterly crucial, and it's, for me, it's a moral obligation, and I'm sure it is for all of you too, and it's a legal obligation. It's called search and serve, I think, isn't it? It's our obligation to find those people, not to wait passively for them to say, hey, I may be, I may need this service. I don't see anything in here that seems current with the latest round of textbook adoptions, which stress and which flow from the California frameworks, both in language arts and in math, which stress what they call universal access. And all the new textbooks have universal access strategies, detailed information about how to differentiate classes, how to address the needs of the specific sets of students. Students have trouble with reading, students who have learning disabilities, English learners. I didn't hear a word about what we're doing to address, what that program is doing to address the special needs of English learners. Or advanced students who are, even in that context, relatively advanced. And yet these are obligations that flow from public policy that flows from Sacramento.
Dr. Noel, I want to be sure that other board members have a chance to speak, so if you could.
Well,
wrap it up.
the fire made it so I couldn't attend the last meeting, and Mr. Capito had a long time to talk, and he had plenty of time tonight too, and I really would like to
If you can wrap it up in a
so
couple
the
minutes.
issues can really have an airing. Don't you think it's a good idea to?
I do, but I also want to hear from Mrs. Deacon and Mr. Herron. So I want to be sure we're being fair here, so please
Well,
finish.
I'm trying to wrap up. I think that if this program is to go ahead, that it has to have some very, very serious review of what is told parents. That there's really a Bill of Rights that ought to be read to them, so they know exactly what they can and cannot do. I am absolutely delighted that Mr. Caprito has agreed that there will be no involuntary transfers. That really simplifies things, because when you get into involuntary transfers, there's a whole set of due process rights written into the legislation. Okay? So that's good, and I'm happy to see that. Lastly, and I know Mr. Caprito does not want to address this issue, but Santa Barbara High School has two academies which are called California Partnership Academies. I don't know what the money is now, but until now, they've been getting $80,000 a year for each of them from the state, and an $80,000 match in kind from the district. They have lower teaching class sizes, 25. They are designed to integrate career technical education, more vocational kinds of things, with the academic curriculum. They're self-contained, and those schools are, to quote a principal with whom I've talked, are segregated. There are no at-risk students, or appreciable numbers of at-risk students in those schools, and yet you read the legislation governing California Partnership Academies, and that is their very essence. They are designed for at-risk students. So there's $360,000 a year coming to Santa Barbara High School for at-risk kids. And we're shouldn't use the word, and we're bending over backwards, pushing kids out of Santa Barbara High School into a continuation school, pushing them from a context of high expectations to a context of low expectations to save a few bucks that come with those CDS numbers for the continuation schools.
Thank you, Dr. Noel.
Thank you for your patience, Madam President.
Mrs. Deacon, Mr. Herron?
Thank you. Well, I have a number of thoughts. First of all, I was on the Santa Barbara High campus on Friday and saw a lot of good things happening there and a lot of students working hard. And I guess my perspective really is that from what I've heard and what I've learned, the genesis for this program really was born out of a genuine concern for students. So I don't really see any ulterior motives here myself. I think success typically occurs when individuals are given a lot of individualized attention. Small focus groups, I think, works. I mean, sometimes I know the research doesn't always support the small school idea, but I do think that when students are shown that people genuinely care about their success, and in a setting like this, I think that can happen. I think there are some good opportunities there. A couple of points I think that are important for us to remember: that this is a voluntary program. Students can leave when they want to. They have the opportunity to graduate if they have enough units. And I think most importantly is that they're not really segregated from the rest of the school, and that they're taking other classes with the regular student population. They're able to participate in sports and extracurricular activities. So I guess my feeling really is that I'd like to give it a try. I mean, I think a lot of things aren't working, and we should look at ideas that have some prospects for success.
Mr. Heron?
I'm concerned about two high schools doing it with totally different programs and understanding. And obviously, the program Dr. Caprito talks about has to cost more money than the one that Mr. Clevenger is talking about. And I'd like to know how all the dollars fit in. If there's a certain amount of money that we have allocated and we're not using it, do we have to give that back? I mean, is this really a matter of money, like Dr. Noel indicates? Because that would concern me too, if it's just purely because of money that we're creating programs. So the dollars, who gets them, where they go, each high school, I know one said $50,000, but obviously both programs don't cost $50,000 each because they're not identical in any way, shape, or form. All the information you provided shows a wonderful intent. But it's a pilot. I mean, it hasn't been done. It's a 4-year program that's going to hit all at once, which is different than a pilot program. The original was a pilot program and grow into something. What we're presented with now is basically a 4-year brand new pilot, which is a big bite of the apple. So,
Do you want to have? Yes. I don't believe the programs are significantly different in their cost at all. And Mr. Clevenger can explain if you'd like. Maybe there was something in his description that made you obviously
just
something.
one grade level, I heard.
Well, yeah, one grade level to start this year, and then analyze the needs of our 10th graders to start either in the springtime or the fall of next year, and in 2 years from now, have a 9 through 12 program.
Right, but Dr. Caprito was talking about next year being a 4-year program.
Well, that's not for us.
I know, but it can't be the same money then.
Well, they're already a year ahead of us. They've already started a year ahead of us. And every school is a little different. The needs at Santa Barbara High School will not be exactly the same as what we are. We have to analyze our own students and, adapt our program to what their needs are. What's on the board now for credit recovery, we have a lot of kids that fit that area for 11th and 12th graders. Students being unsuccessful as 10th graders for next year, yes, we have those too. The biggest issue that we've had in the past and never had a place or any kind of program to assist was with incoming 9th graders that are unprepared for high school. And that's going to be the focus where we're going to start. When you talk about funding, we're looking at keeping class sizes small and a common prep so that teachers can communicate with each other about every single kid in the program. Those are, I don't suppose that $50,000 would support a whole 9 through 12 program, but they are our kids, and we're going to incorporate it because this is something that our kids need.
To answer your other question too, though, if there's not a specific dollar amount that's for each CDS code, so if we're not going to lose money, it will be absolutely no additional cost to the district. So if there's a difference in what a particular program costs because it's attached to a particular CDS code number, it won't matter at all. That money, as Eric described, goes right into the general fund because it's the block grant in Tier 3.
But if we don't use it, I thought Dr. Smith.
Yeah, that's correct. You have to operate the 4 continuation high schools. You have to have 4 CDS codes. And so we had 4 before, and that's how we were able to retain it.
Right.
But all the money that comes into those 4 codes that have to be spent on these programs.
No.
No.
So
We simply have
You
to.
have to operate.
We have to show that students are enrolled under that CDS code.
Yes.
So the money that we don't spend goes into the unrestricted.
That's correct.
Current.
You could look at it similar to the whole philosophical argument relative to Meals for Needy. So it was an add-on to the revenue limit. It's essentially unrestricted. There's not a direct one-for-one relationship between the student population that generates it and the dollars being reinvested in that population, even though some proportion of it has to, because it's unrestricted. It's just like when you generate revenue limit dollars from ADA, you know, at one school, it might end up being spent at another school. We don't track to that level of detail.
Right. Well, and for me, I want to point out that, yes, it's, there's money involved, but it's about buying smaller class sizes and extra sections. So it's, money is there for student services and for student needs. I mean, honestly, in an ideal world, if the district were in a better financial position, if the state were in a better financial position, I would like to see more of the pupil retention block grant money going to these programs so that you can reduce the class sizes dramatically. Obviously, this is not probably the year that we can do that. But I think that very small class sizes can make a big difference for these students. But also the structure of the day, the way you're playing things out, I think that will make a difference too. And I appreciate that Santa Barbara High has essentially had a pilot program, looked at it over the course of the year and tweaked it. You've obviously come up with a plan based on your experience this past year. And so I appreciate that. And I don't expect this program to be static in either one of your cases. I know that you'll be learning over the course of the next year, and I would hope that anything that you feel needs changing. Obviously, we'd all be getting board reports on this over the course of the year if we approve it, but also would expect you to come back to us with changes over time. All right, we have spent well over an hour on this item. So I would like to wrap this up. I'd like to know if there's a motion from board members on item on item E1.
I will move to approve the Santa Barbara Continuation High School and the San Marcos Continua High School bridge programs.
Is there a second? I will second it then. Any further discussion on this? Mr. Herron? Mike?
Could we add to that we request a report back within 1 year showing the results of the programs?
I would actually like to see a report back by the end of the first semester. If we could add that into the motion.
How about immediately after the first semester?
Okay, and as a seconder, I'll approve that. Dr. Noel?
Yes, I'd like to propose several amendments,
Mm-hmm.
or one with commas.
Okay.
That all add-on funds, using Mr. Smith's language, shall follow the students, minus indirect costs for the district. Okay. That means, and by that I mean that the student block grant, the block grant funds that are justified by that student go to the school that teaches that student, minus indirect costs. Okay, that's the first part. Comma. Okay, that there shall be no involuntary enrollment in these schools. That all students who test in the far below basic and basic range shall receive a pre-referral evaluation with regard to learning disabilities. Comma. That the schools shall give every parent a board-approved information package explaining the program and that it is voluntary. Explaining the implications of the program and that it's voluntary. And that is to include their rights under No Child Left Behind, the information about the WASC accreditation status of the school, comma. And finally, that there will be an independent evaluation of an outside independent evaluation of the program at the end of the first year. Now, and I think to incorporate your thought, your thought, Mr. Herron, was to have it a report sooner, or are you
It
already?
was the end of the, immediately ending the first
Do we need to
semester.
put that in, do I need to put that in the motion, or?
It's already in the main motion. We
Okay,
agreed
it's
on that in the main motion.
Okay, all right. That's what I have then.
All right, is there a second to that amendment? Amendment dies for lack of a second.
I'd like to explain, I can't second it because of number 1 and number 5.
And Mrs. Deacon?
I would agree. My main concern would be a cost associated with an outside independent evaluation, and also the concern about trying to have the dollars follow the students, because I don't know how that would.
It'll create shortfalls elsewhere in the budget because you already have those dollars allocated to other expenses.
Right, okay. So I would agree with Mr. Herron if you're proposing a second, a revised.
Is there another amendment that a board member would like to make?
If Dr. Noel wants to have an amendment for 2, 3, and 4, I would second that.
Which one, 2, 3, and 4?
2, 3, with no involuntary enrollment, learners with disabilities, and board-approved information programs. With it, I have those down as your 2, 3, and 4, but your wording was more encompassing.
Yeah. So I can't get any support for number 1,
I
to
would
make
need-
sure that the kids get the money.
Well, I would need more information on that, because the way I would look at that is that all of a sudden, you might have tremendous numbers of dollars going to a few students. And that's, 'cause if you're gonna say if there's 30 students and you got the same amount of money as the other school has for 60 students, those 30 are gonna get double the money, and I can't follow that logic.
My assumption was that it was per student dollars.
Well,
No, it's a lump sum add-on. There's no relationship between the number of students and the amount. The amounts for the add-on were always around $100,000. So what you're saying is actually correct. You could have 30
That doesn't
students
sound
there and
like, it
100,000
doesn't sound
people.
like an abundance of money to run a program like this.
No,
Well-
but I'm sorry. But the proposal, your proposal does add $100,000 in expenses beyond what this proposal does.
Expenses?
Well,
They're saying that this program will cost $50,000 to schools or $100,000,
Yeah.
but yet they're bringing in $200,000.
But they're bringing in 200.
And so,
Yeah.
to just arbitrarily say, okay, let's go spend another $100,000 on this program, to me, doesn't make logical sense.
Well, okay, then how about up to?
I personally would be more comfortable with what Mr. Herron has currently proposed, and I don't know if staff want to comment on any of those 3 items. Mrs. Sawatsky?
The thing about the amount of money coming, that's not based on 30 students. You could have any number, so that could be an encouragement to have a whole lot more kids in.
Yeah,
If you got
okay.
$100,000 going to that school, you could end up with 100 kids.
Okay, I
you know.
I really do appreciate what you're saying.
But what about
You-
the 3?
You appreciate what I'm saying?
Yeah. What about the 3, those central 3 tenets, which are that there shall be no involuntary enrollment, that all students at far below basic and below basic get a pre-referral for special education, or a special education assessment, and that every parent gets a board-approved information packet.
Without knowing the exact way in which the SST process and the pyramid of intervention works at Santa Barbara High School, I don't know about that exact. I would say, and I wanted to add this earlier, so now I have the opportunity. When you've got a small group of students there with really one-on-one contact with a few number of staff members, any students who have gotten that far in their educational experience, either in our district or maybe they've come in from a different school district, looking at them and assessing for any kind of learning disability is going to be, that kind of thing is going to be very apparent for a group that small. So I would say, I think we can guarantee that the assessments would happen following the route or the way you go through the student referral process would be in place, certainly, and there'd be high attention to that. I don't know that every single student that is below basic or far below basic necessarily has a learning problem,
But
you know, learning.
you don't know that they don't.
No,
And
we don't know
that's-
that we
That's the
don't.
point of that's my point.
I was unclear about what you meant, automatic pre-referral.
Automatic assessment, so they would
No,
automatically assess.
not an assessment. I'm talking about the kind of preliminary things you do to try to see whether this kid really needs assessing.
Oh, so
Oh,
I see, you're talking
yes.
about maybe
Somebody
putting
here
it through
from
an
special
SST,
You know what?
which
That's
they
part
would
of-
be anyway.
That's part of the program right now. That's already in place. It wasn't noted in here, but that's we can put it in writing because that is in place.
Okay, then there's no problem leaving that
No
in.
problem.
All right, and Dr. Hayden, do you want to chime in on anything there, or is that?
Dr. Noel just clarified that I was going to have an ethical problem with using the CSTs in that way. But he clarified what he was meaning, and it's fine with me.
So instead, they would essentially go through the SST process? So that would, how would that read in the motion, in the amendment?
We could simply ensure an appropriate search and referral process is in place for students with possible learning disabilities.
Yeah, search and serve.
And that's what should be done anyway.
All right,
But we could write that into it.
all right.
And
So
I'd like to hope that was already happening, but if,
Yeah.
and I suspect it is, but we can definitely put it in writing.
So-
Let me just,
Yes, Dr.
may I
Noel.
say, Madam President, just one more thing on the money.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I don't swallow well is the idea that these kids are the justification for that add-on money, and then it goes into the general fund and can be used any way the board feels. And it just seems so exploitative to me. I wish I could find some formula that would satisfy my colleagues that would address that issue.
Well,
thank you. And Mrs. Deacon?
Oh, I was just going to say, but we would then lose the money completely as an alternative. Is that not true?
Well, I'm not suggesting that.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
suggesting
Okay.
that somehow that the use of these funds be guided by a norm, a philosophy, that this money should be spent insofar as is practical, possible, not just practical, okay?
So-
On the students.
May I suggest something that they may put your mind to rest about this? The origin of this was something called necessary small school funding. And in a small school, you have more expenses, often because you have additional administrative expenses, you have additional counseling expenses. These are borne by the regular program. And in doing so, the regular program is standing the expense of those expenditures that you would normally have to undertake through a very small school. And
And
go ahead.
let's really finish this
Yeah,
up, Mr.
that's one
Aaron.
question. I mean, what is the guarantee that these funds are going to be available on into the future? For what period of time?
What is the guarantee that any funds are going to be available in the
Well,
future?
I guess that's my concern. We're creating, we're creating a program with funds that.
Well, I mean, I think there's two things. I mean, you have to address one, and it kind of speaks to Dr. Noel's point. You have a whole series of 39 categoricals that you could make the argument are generated by specific targeted student populations that no longer follow those populations, at least for 4 years. That's the whole Tier 3 flexibility issue. So I think at a minimum, we know that they're going to be unrestricted. There's quite a debate about what's going to happen after the 4 years, because local educational agencies are going to basically use these categoricals in unrestricted and quasi-unrestricted ways, and it's going to be very difficult to turn back the clock in 4 years.
I guess part of my problem also is that I don't think this is going to operate on 50,000 a year for a minute. I think this is going to cost vastly more money,
Yeah,
because.
the 50,000 is above and beyond the ADA they generate too.
Yeah, I still don't think so. My understanding of effective intervention programs is they're very expensive. That it's unrealistic to talk about a 30-student class size. The norms are much, much smaller, 15, maybe 12. And if you really want to be effective, and that we certainly want to be the case,
All right.
it's just going to cost a lot more money.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor made by Mr. Herron, and I would like Ms. Hall to read it back as it currently
I
stands.
think I said that I'd be happy to second it if Dr. Noel would make it.
I don't know that Dr. Noel will be willing to make it, so is there somebody else who is willing to make this motion?
I'll make it if Dr. Noel will not.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
All right, and so can you read back the motion? This is the amendment to the main motion.
There shall be no involuntary enrollment in the school. Parents shall receive a board-approved enrollment package that indicates that the program is voluntary. We will ensure that there is an appropriate search and serve process in place.
I think the second part was much more encompassing than just notifying them that it's voluntary. It had a
Yeah, I actually think maybe just remove the line about it being voluntary because it's a board-approved packet. It'll come back to us. Yeah.
So then we just have the two pieces.
No,
No, there's three.
it's in there, but just say that shall be, every parent gets a board-approved information packet, and the board will then later determine what's in that
And
information.
Dr. Noel had a lot of things listed that he would like to see included in that, but
Which we could address when we address the board approval on that. Is there
Yeah,
a second?
yeah, that's it.
Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second.
Okay, so all those in favor of this amendment to the main motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
It carries 3-1. So that is now amended the main motion. All those in favor of the new motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
And that passes 3-1.
Could I just one comment?
Yes, Mr. Hearn.
You know, I would hope that when we have the review, that we keep in mind this idea of the funds and give us some idea of how much the programs are costing, so we know how much money is going someplace else. And two, even though I didn't agree with the independent evaluation by an outside source, after 6 months or after the first report, we may want to, but I, for one, am against spending money for independent consultants real easily.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Deacon.
I'll make this really quick. I just want to say that I am really sensitive to the comments by the speakers, and I want to make sure that, well, first of all, this packet absolutely has to be translated into Spanish, and I'm sure that will happen, but I also want to make sure that the sites do an extraordinary effort outreaching to, say, the ELAC organizations and making sure, it sounds like parents aren't necessarily getting all the accurate information. It may originate in an accurate form, but as it's passed along, it may not be as complete as it should be. So I think maybe we need to take an extra step to make sure that parents absolutely understand what their students are potentially going to be involved in.
Thank you. All right, we have a number of people here. Obviously, we're running far behind due to technical difficulties and a lot of time spent on item E1. We have a lot of people here on F2, discussion of board member proposal to combine La Cumbre Junior High School and Santa Barbara Community Academy as a kindergarten through 8th grade school. So we're going to go ahead and jump to item F2 at this point.
Dr. Noel, do you want to introduce this?
It's very simple. I just raised the question that as we were considering hiring a principal for a very small school that is located on the junior high school campus, which is also small, that that we might want to consider having the same principal for both schools. And then if I recall, I don't know, was this in communication with you, Mrs. Parker? I
I'm not
forget.
sure.
Communication with somebody. I think that it occurred to me also there may be something more than a financial justification for this because La Cumbre has a core knowledge program, and the Community Academy is also a core knowledge program.
Okay, do we have public comment on this item?
Amy Alziner, I'm sorry, Alzina, I knew that. Kathleen Rogers, followed by Christine Shi.
I am speaking on behalf of the teachers of the Santa Barbara Community Academy, so they are standing behind me, and I am their spokesperson.
And you still only get 3 minutes.
All right. Dear members of the school board,
We, the entire faculty and staff of the Santa Barbara Community Academy, respectfully ask the board to consider our options concerning the proposed combination of Santa Barbara Community Academy and La Cumbre into one kindergarten through 8th school. We are adamantly opposed to such a proposal for a variety of reasons. First, the needs of elementary school students are vastly different from those of junior high students. The two schools need to maintain their separate status in order to effectively meet those needs. For example, it would be inappropriate for young elementary students to mingle with the junior high students in order to see the principal, the health assistant, or office staff. Secondly, the two schools have different visions and missions. The Academy was founded as and has continued to be a core knowledge school. Over several years, we have completed the process to be recognized by the Core Knowledge Foundation as an official core knowledge visitation site. We have continued to meet the criteria each year to maintain that status. That is our essential character. While La Cumbre has a core knowledge English language arts and history strand, that strand is only part of the junior high school as a whole. Santa Barbara Community Academy has been a school of choice within the district. Families are attracted to our small elementary school and to our unique character, which includes core knowledge, uniforms, year-round calendar, and mandatory parental involvement. Many families would, however, rethink their choice of schools if the Academy and La Cumbre were made into one kindergarten through 8 school. It is also illogical to combine schools that have two separate calendars. Santa Barbara Community Academy has done well as a year-round school. We attract families whose children benefit from shorter breaks in the academic year. La Cumbre operates on a traditional calendar, as do all other junior high schools. Each school needs to retain its calendar in order to meet the needs of children it serves. Both schools have established successful programs, as evidenced by test scores. Combining the schools might save money in the short term, but it will not be cost-effective in the long term, because the programs of each school will be compromised if you move forward with this proposal. In conclusion, we are asking you to please rethink the suggestions to combine Santa Barbara Community Academy and La Cumbre under one administrator. This proposal is not in the best interest of all students involved and therefore not aligned to the district's mission as a whole. Please allow Santa Barbara Community Academy and La Cumbre to remain separate and successful. Respectfully, the Santa Barbara Community Academy teachers and staff. And what I just wanted to briefly state as an administrator of the Academy and what I have noticed is that the success of the Academy is based on 3 essential ingredients. It is a small school, a small community.
One
It
second.
needs to establish this,
Can we
and
have another
also,
30 Can we give Amy another 30 seconds?
that would be fabulous, thank you. And our year-round calendar, which is also essential to our high test scores, I believe. And then our core knowledge curriculum has taken us 10 years to get here, 10 years. Retaining these teachers that have been with the Academy, all except for one teacher has been here at least 5 years. The buy-in from the teachers, it's not a curriculum that you can automatically have teachers buy in immediately. It takes a collaborative approach. It is very, very time-consuming curriculum. It is not aligned to the California state standards. It was a year-long process that each grade level took to align that curriculum to the standards with fidelity. And the cost, it is very expensive because, again, it is a framework and it's up to the teacher to deliver that curriculum with that framework.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your dedication, all of you. Kathleen Rogers, followed by Kristen Shee.
Hello. I'm Kathleen Rogers, and I'm a proud Santa Barbara Community Academy parent, as are the others folks here. All of us are parents. I am a parent of a kindergartner, Madeline. She's in the back. And I appreciate the chance to speak publicly and also for the change in the agenda to help the elementary school families. I think the discussion to combine the two schools, La Cumbre Junior High and the Santa Barbara Community Academy, should definitely be considered with caution and care. I personally do not support the idea, and because the schools are very different. My neighbor is a senior, or an 8th grader, I should say, at La Cumbre Junior High. They're very different communities, different missions, different cultures, and we have very distinct needs and age groups. My daughter, as a kindergartner, you know, the early childhood education is very critical to me, and one of the reasons I chose the school was for the curriculum, the year-round calendar, the uniforms. I live on the west side, and it's just a very diverse and unique community. I certainly understand the budget constraints, but again, I don't believe that it would benefit either school. As Amy mentioned, the academy is in the 10th year, and you know, our kindergarten teacher has been there all 10 years. Many of the families here behind me have had, you know, multiple kids go through the academy, and I'm learning so much from the parent community. The parents are very involved. We like to be informed of decisions that affect our children, and the fact that we were notified about this over a holiday weekend was very, you know, there's a lot of concern in that as well, not getting an opportunity to really be communicated to with adequate notice. We do choose, well, I personally did choose the academy after looking at both public and private schools, and it was the core knowledge curriculum. When I called a variety of schools, the principal actually called me back the same day and gave me a tour of not only the kindergarten programs, and I was able to meet the kindergarten teachers, but I met all the teachers and really got a chance to get a sense of what the academy does throughout all the years. And my mom is a teacher, my sister's a teacher. I come from a family of teachers. And I asked them, well, when you're teaching history, can you also teach English? And can you kind of talk about the same curriculum? It's very unique. And the principal of the new, you know, our new principal to replace Principal Alzina is going to have big shoes to fill. And I really feel like it has to be someone who's really excited about the community academy, is welcoming of the community
About
academy.
20 seconds.
Thank you. Is welcoming of the community academy and the community academy families. Like all Santa Barbara schools, we are ready to work within the budget constraints. We do need a new principal. We've conducted a search for a new leader, and we've included staff, parents, and administrators. So please allow us to continue that process, and please don't risk changing a school that is really working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Christine Shi.
Yeah, that would be great. That's okay. It's all right. It's okay.
We know that they're all standing behind you, at least in spirit, if not in actuality.
Thank you, guys. Okay, my name's Kristen Shi, and I'm a mother of two students at Santa Barbara Community Academy, and I'm also a mother of one at La Cumbre Junior High. So I have obviously both campuses going. I just wanted to point out that we have two great schools going right now at side by side. What I'm here to say is that I would like to keep two separate identities. And just because we have a close proximity, please don't mix them. I know Dr. Noel's suggestion is one option, and because of our budget cuts. And yes, we're losing a great principal this year, so I know that we have to work together and find some different options and go through some changes. And we're willing to do that, obviously. But Mrs. Keynes is another great principal, but I think if we overextend her and have her take on the community academy, is it going to be fair for all of the children involved? Is it going to be fair for the lower grade kids and the junior high? I mean, a person can only do so much. I mean, she's really great, but think about the kids. We have two different identities, two different subjects, two completely different schools. So that's just all that I really wanted to point out. I know that the two previous speakers have pointed out the differences with the schools, and I just wanted to say, yes, we have two different identities with the two different locations with a close proximity, and that's what I'm just stressing. Just because of our proximity, I don't think we should merge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming this late and being patient. I know some of you have sleeping children and some of you have jet lag, so thanks. Board members.
I want to, before you all go away, I want to apologize to you, not for bringing up the idea, but for the way it's put that you had felt you had to come down here tonight to fight it. I wanted to start a conversation, okay? And I don't know whether you're aware of it or not, but I can't do that. We can't talk to one another about ideas like this. And I don't recall my email, but I thought I envisioned a spectrum. The one end would be simply one principal, two schools. I like the academy. I have a great affection for the academy. And you know, I won't relate the history, but I was very much involved in its creation. And it never would enter my mind to destroy the culture, destroy what you've accomplished at the academy. I see the decline in enrollments, and I see expected further declines in enrollments. I see how small, and I see what our budget is, and I think, and what brought the whole thing up in my mind was we're looking for a new principal. We've got, the principal at Lecumberri happens to have one of the best track records as an elementary principal that the district has ever seen. So, you know, I was comfortable with that idea. But most importantly, I just wanted to start a conversation. I'm sorry the way it came out in the agenda because just it's making a K-8 school and destroy that could be read that I wanted to destroy the identity. I had no control over those wording, and I'm not blaming anybody because I don't remember what I said in my email for sure, but that's not what I meant. That would be one possibility, but not one that I would favor. Anyway, so we know if it's a conversation, we sure know how a lot of people feel.
Other board members?
I agree with Dr. Noel. I interpret it as a conversation because I see no way that kind of a change could be made in the next 2 weeks. I mean, that's not how we operate. And it would take an awful lot of study and over a period of time if, in fact, any combination of schools or any closing of schools would ever take place. So rest assured there was no intent of, it was a conference item on the agenda, so that's not even an action item that we would have taken action on. So thank you all for coming, but I'm glad we gave you late notice because otherwise you'd really be in a mess. So actually it worked out okay.
But I think you accomplished something. I doubt like hell if it'll be on the action agenda.
Mrs. Deacon?
I'm not sure I need to say a whole lot more, but I was also very conscientious of the fact that, or conscious rather, I should say, of the fact that you're not only losing a principal, but you've had to your third location, and this is a school that has such a strong program and such a great track record that, you know, we don't want to start messing that up. So, you know, it may be a conversation that goes on for a while, and ultimately, you know, there may be some ways to bring the two schools together in some kind of blended program, but I don't think the academy's at risk at all, at least from my perspective.
Just one more thing. I know that probably every one of you was involved in your recent fundraiser, and that's the kind of activity and the participation that makes the school very special. So I don't know how much you made, but I have a feeling you made a lot of money, and I'm sorry I wasn't there.
I just want to chime in a couple things. One is that the Academy is here because the Academy has received notification about this. Obviously, this did just come up on the agenda this past week. The Lecumberri community, I'm quite sure, would have been here saying the same thing if they even knew about it, but really parents and staff there don't know about it. I think that each school is really happy with its own unique identity. And while I appreciate that there could be cost savings if you went to something like a truly combined school where you only have one health assistant and you only have one office manager, but if it's simply combining, if you're just bringing the administrator over to do both schools, because of the difference in calendar, and the increased school size, you'd end up having to hire an assistant principal. And so I think that there would be no cost savings simply by trying to share one administrator. I also think that the district has done quite an admirable job of trying to use the La Cumbre facility in a very cost-efficient manner. And both schools have office staff and counseling and so on based on enrollment. So I really don't see cost as being a huge issue here. Thank you so much to the public for making your feelings known to the Academy. Obviously, your participation here tonight makes a big difference. So thank you. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and take our break before we get back to the E items, and we'll see about which items we're going to be pulling from the conference agenda. So with no objection, we'll take a 10-minute break at this point. We have a number of items to get through, that we have to get through on the action agenda and on the conference agenda. There are two items that we're going to pull, and they are item F3, the report on elementary and secondary academic performance index and similar schools report. That will be pulled for a later agenda. And F4, report on partial tax measures H 2008 and I 2008 preliminary staffing plans and budget. So those will both come back to us in the future. A reminder that we not only have consent agenda items that we're going to have to get through, but we are also returning to closed session. So at this time, I would ask us to move pretty briskly through the remainder of the action agenda, starting with item E2, the approval of the Board of Education self-evaluation form.
I think thanks are in order to Susan Deacon and Bob Noel for working on this. I received no comments from board members when it went out to the board, so it's on for your approval tonight.
Is there a motion?
Oh, I'll second it.
Any discussion? I know that obviously two members at least here really think it's a great evaluation form, but I think it's really well done as well, so thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously, again, 4-0 with
Now we
Cordero
get to
absent.
evaluate you.
Absolutely, and we will try to bring that back either at the end of June or possibly our July meeting, which is normally pretty quiet, so we can get this actually filled out and discussed. Item E3, appointment of a community member to fill a vacant position on the Measure V Bond Oversight Committee.
This is similar to the item we had on our last agenda when a board member suggested someone to serve on the bond committee.
And this has, Jean Blois has expressed a willingness to serve.
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I would like to move that we we request that Jean Blois serve on the Measure V Bond Oversight Committee, that she fill the vacant position, sorry.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0.
And we will notify her, and thank you for talking to her, Ms. Deacon.
Then we're moving on to item E3, appointment of a community member, and we're moving on to item E4. I can do this. Second reading and adoption of Administrative Regulation 6155, challenging courses by examination.
Robin Sawaski.
Yes, you can see from the item itself, the AR, the crossed out language was the language that was called to attention at a previous board meeting with that, where it made no sense to have the proficient in advance, and so the underlined language is the new language that we put together.
Any board comments on it? Is there a motion?
I'll move that we accept, the new wording for, and we approve AR 6155 as amended as second reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0. And we're on to item E5, approval of resolution 0809-40, recognizing Santa Barbara School District's Employee Appreciation Day.
Well, we would like the board to approve the resolution that recognizes our Employee Appreciation Day for this Friday.
I move to approve the resolution.
Is there a second? Any discussion? I'm looking forward to it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes 4-0. Now we're moving on to item E6, board action on student expulsion case numbers 0809-5 and 0809-61. Board members, are there motions on the first one?
With regard
Sorry,
to
it's
case
actually,
number-
I want to correct that because in the, on the agenda it says 0809-5. They've dropped off the one. It's actually 0809-51. So let's be clear about that.
I didn't quite hear you. Did you say it's not 51, it's 50?
No,
First
it's
five?
51. What I'm noticing on here, there's a little typo that the one dropped off the
Oh,
agenda.
It's fine on our worksheet.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
with regard to case number 0809-51, I move that the board accept the recommendations and findings of the hearing panel.
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Deacon has the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0.
Case 0809-61, I move that the board accept the findings and recommendations of the hearing panel.
I wa- make a note that that's actually a stipulated agreement.
Oops, it is indeed. Accept the stipulated agreement.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
It passes 4-0. Okay, so now we're on to item F1, the conference agenda, report on anticipated May revision to the state budget, federal stimulus money, and consideration of further budget cuts for the 09-10 fiscal year.
And Eric Smith, our Deputy Superintendent for Business Services, will present this.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. As the board knows, the budget that was adopted in February hinged on the passage of 5 initiatives on the May 19th ballot. As you also know, none of those measures were successful, and the result of that being that now we have a budget deficit that is a balloon from $15.4 billion to 21, 22, 23, choose your number, billion, and growing. And because the initiatives failed, basically the budget that was adopted, which was a 17-month budget in February, is now null and void. And we moved to another budget scenario, which is predicated on a yet to be released May revision to the state budget. So using what we call the glimpse of the May revise, we know that there's a significant budget deficit. We know that the governor's opined that basically there'll be no revenue increases, and this basically was a vote of the people to basically reduce expenditures rather than increase revenues. And we know that every sector of government will be hit and nobody will be spared, using his own words. So we don't have details until the May revise is basically released on June 8th, but we have enough to back into what the deficits will be. We know that they will primarily be on the unrestricted side, although we could see some categorical deficits, but at this point we have not seen any indications of that. So on a macro level, we know that there's going to be more mid-year cuts, $617 million in the current year, $2.6 billion in reductions in revenue in 9-10. And the way that translates to us is some significant one-time hits this year and also some ongoing reductions. For this year, we're looking at basically a reduction in the elementary district of about $762,000. And we'll talk about why it's not as severe in the elementary as the secondary in a minute. We have a graphic representation to show you that. And then we're also looking in the secondary district, basically a reduction in revenue of about $2,203,000. Then in 9-10, we're looking at a reduction in the elementary of about $306,000 and about $1.9 million of ongoing in the secondary district. And really the relationship between the secondary and elementary, or the difference there, is really due to the fact that because the deficit is being applied to the revenue limit, it's accelerating the elementary's, I would say ascent, but it's more like descent into basic aid status, because what it's doing is it's driving down the revenue limit entitlement while our property taxes are going up. So in one sense, that's good because you don't take the full brunt of the reduction of state aid, but you're also basically educating those students at a lower funding level, although it could be significantly worse if you had to take the full deficit. So what we're really trying to do is figure out what are we going to do this year and what are we going to do next year. We think most of the reductions this year will be offset by federal stimulus dollars. However, we have a concern that some of the preliminary estimates that we received might be diluted by the fact that since no sector of government will be spared, both the UC and CSU systems will take a greater hit, and I'll read something to you in a minute. And since basically the federal stimulus dollars have to backfill all cuts in education, including higher education, if UC and CSU are basically hit harder, they'll have to restore those cuts with the federal stimulus dollars, which means we'll receive proportionally less. We don't know how much less, and that's something we'll be interested to see in the May revise, which incidentally is released in June. So we're also trying to grapple with, since we know there'll be significant ongoing reductions in revenue in the secondary district in 9-10, and to some extent, revenue reductions in the elementary, we really don't think that we can be complacent. We need to be proactive. And as much as I hate to say this, I think we're going to have to ask the board to look at more expenditure reductions. And since we have a very tight timeline, since our budget has to be adopted by June 23rd, we'd basically be looking at bringing something back on June 9th. In my mind, because of the uncertainty relative to the state budget, and I'll illustrate a point here in a minute, I think probably we'd have to look at about 500,000 in the elementary just because of the uncertainty, since really we only need to go about 300,000 to 400,000, but we don't know what's going to happen on the May revise. And then also probably about $1 million in the secondary, because we're looking at $2 million worth of ongoing revenue reduction going into 9-10. And if we don't do something significant, then we always stand the risk of getting too far behind the 8 ball and not being able to catch up. One of the things that I thought was significant that shows you how dynamic and volatile this whole situation is when the governor first released his February budget, he wanted to use a revenue anticipation warrant, which is basically, you would think of that in our terms like a trance. It's a cash flow instrument. And they were going to use it basically to solve the budget by basically issuing debt and then paying $5.6 billion worth of debt back in 2010, 2011, which that just means the bill comes back in 2010, 2011. He's since pulled back that proposal and now is going to make cuts to basically fill the $5.6 billion, eliminating CalWORKS program, $1.3 billion, reduce rehabilitative services for inmates, $789 million, Medi-Cal and other health-related reductions, $747 million, sweep gas tax revenue for general fund to pay highway debt service bonds, $744 million, reductions to University of California and California State University systems, $450 million in 8-9, $335 million in 9-10. That will have implications for us. Phase out Cal grants, $173 million in 9-10, and maintain 2-day furlough for state workers of $150 million. So basically what you're seeing is a significant shift just from his February proposal to basically really look at expenditure reductions across the board, and we might not be done. We might see something that's even more draconian at the May revise. So that's why I kind of throw the number around about 500,000 in the elementary, just because I think that would put us in a good place. Secondary, we can't do $2 million between now and June 23rd, but we probably could get to $1 million. We have a lot of things out there in terms of flexibility and some options that we haven't explored, and then we also left some things on the table too. So what I'd be looking at is probably bringing something back relative to another menu. You probably don't get all the narrative this time on June 9th, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions.
It would be conference on June 9th and action the second meeting in June, yes.
Well, no.
We need
No.
action on these.
We need action, because generally what we would have is we would have June 9th as our preliminary budget, and 23rd we would adopt our budget. That's according to our budget calendar. But because we're so compressed because of what happened in February and then with the defeat of the initiatives, everything's kind of got, pushed off.
I guess I'm really concerned about public input, but we can talk about that, board members.
Well, and
Mrs.
also
Deacon.
just turnaround time on decision-making. I mean, I would want to see this menu before the Friday before a meeting. I mean, we
we're
need to be
taking
able to
action
see
on.
it, digest it, think about it, ask questions.
There's one other possibility, although Meg doesn't like this possibility. I won't be here on the 30th, but you do have a special, and we could use the 9th and the 23rd and make most of the decisions on the 23rd and then bring it back kind of almost as a consent item on the 30th, because we have to have it to the county office on the 1st.
So you mean the final, having the final budget done
The
on the
del-
30th as a consent?
Yeah, because you will have made, that would give you more time relative to deliberations.
It would also mean, if we waited that long, that the positions, the layoff notices that we have not rescinded would remain unrescinded. And people would not know then until after the 23rd of June.
Board members, Mr. Herron.
I don't see any reason to postpone to the 30th if the intent is to put out a consent calendar just to pass it, because all the decisions would still have to be made, by the 23rd. So I don't know what we would gain by that extra week.
Well, because it won't be incorporated in the SACS format, and that's a quite a labor-intensive task. So basically, you could make those decisions, but you'd be making decisions that we couldn't get in the approvable format for another week.
Okay, so it's more of a technical issue.
Exactly.
May I propose we could do a study session 1 week and then go into a board meeting the following week?
So before the 9th?
Like in between the 9th and the 23rd, the off week?
But we would need to have action. It wouldn't be a study. The 9th would end up being like a study session, and then we need a special meeting for action.
It would be a special meeting for action.
So we already have 3 board meetings in June. Do we want to add a 4th, is essentially?
Could June 2nd, could we have the numbers by June 2nd, so we could?
The problem with the June 2nd is there's always the possibility June 8th that some of those things could go in our favor. And I'll give you an example. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up too high, but, the things we're hearing out of the Capitol is, the board made a decision relative to increasing class size reduction to 21.45. Well, part of that discussion revolved around the fact that there were revenue penalties. Some of the discussions that was a revenue penalties might go away, which that would just, it's not even a cut, you just get more money, right? So I would hate to act before we had, a total command of all the information, because some of those things could alleviate the board from having to make cuts deeper than they might have to.
And I'm trying to the May revise is coming out June 8th, and our meeting is the 9th. Okay. Dr. Noel.
I won't be here on June 9th, just
Okay.
FYI.
Yes, and I believe Mrs. Cordero won't be here before June 9th. Any other board member discussion? Mrs. Deacon?
Well, maybe we should discuss it on June 9th and then try to have a special meeting the following week.
Dr. Noel, would you be back by the 16th if we have a Tuesday?
I'll be back on the 14th.
Okay, so we could have a special meeting for action on Tuesday, the 16th? Okay.
I think that's advisable.
Okay.
In fact, I don't see any good reason to have the discussion before the June 8th May revise comes out. I mean, we gained so much information on that we don't have right now.
Okay. Any further comments on just what Mr. Smith has stated tonight?
There was some concern that going basic aid might jeopardize our ability to get the federal stimulus money. Is that not a concern?
Well, it is a concern, and actually that is a concern in 9-10, but we won't go basic aid in 8-9. And actually what we're seeing right now is that the original estimates were the money was supposed to be enough to backfill revenue limit deficit and categorical deficits in 8-9, and then hopefully 33% of those deficits in 9-10. But we're seeing it so diluted, we doubt we'll see anything in 9-10, so we're probably not going to lose anything. Or if we do, it's going to be it won't be like, millions of dollars.
So just to be clear, the federal stimulus money is really for the fiscal year 08-09. So we
That's
are absolutely
correct.
clear for basic aid.
That's correct.
Okay, and also for 9-10, we're not identified as a basic aid district, right, until after P2?
At P2, it'd have to be recertified.
So that's at the end of April or so.
But I doubt, from what I'm seeing in the landscape, I think there's going to be very little stimulus dollars that fall into 9-10. I just think it's going to be spread over too many. The hits are getting bigger everywhere, so it's going to be spread over that to backfill it.
Okay. All right, well, that's bad news that we all expected, unfortunately. Mr. Herron?
In the paper, and maybe I just read it negatively, but it sounded, the impression, one of the papers was that we're on the verge of bankruptcy, or sounded like that. That's not true, is it?
No, I mean, we're still carrying, a reserve greater than 7%, and actually, the stimulus dollars will offset, this hit, so we'll probably still be able to carry a reserve greater than that. I think, we don't talk about the good job we do, because we've been mired in the state's crisis for so long. But the fact of the matter is if we didn't have the reserve that we did, then something like this kind of hit could drive you into bankruptcy. I mean, if you're at 3%, I mean, think about that. I mean, the level of deficits, and I don't know, Meg, were you going to show that illustration? Yeah, why don't you walk through it real quick?
This may look familiar, because it's the same one I use for the basic aid calculations. So basically, here is as what was
It's the
going on.
elementary district, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, this is the elementary district. This is at second interim, when our last approved budget. We have now, that's the ADA that we were using at the time. This is our base revenue limit per ADA, which gives us a total base revenue limit of $25 million. We have meals for needy and teacher salaries, beginning teacher salary, which is a little bit of money that we get. Then the revenue limit that is subject to the deficit, and that was the deficit, and it came out to about 7.84 or something like that. $23 million in revenue limit that was after the deficit. Then we have some miscellaneous decreases, so our revenue limit totaled $23 million. Property taxes came in at 28. This is a revised number, or this is the number we used in second interim, excuse me. This is our in lieu that goes to the charter schools. So we came down to $22 million in property taxes. Take that from our revenue limit amount, and we get $1.1 million in state aid. That's what we thought we were going to get at second interim.
So you're 1.1 million into revenue limit there.
Right. So then the calculation as of P2, ADA numbers, and after the May 19th election, our revenue limit, or our number of children, our ADA was a little higher. So we used that ADA number because we're higher than, because of the prior year funding per ADA does not account here because we went up in ADA. Then we have the same amount of base revenue limit of $5,800, which brings us to $25 million, $25.5 million. Same sort of calculation. Thank you. Here's our deficit that we thought we were going, that we now know is 16%? Yeah, 16.74.
Actually, it grows.
No,
that's the
no,
next
this
year.
is the next year. This is 11 or
Right.
11 point something. I forget what it is. Then that brings us to $22 million in deficited revenue. So then we have some miscellaneous revenue here, and then total revenue limit. Property taxes has decreased since we have come, since the second interim, slightly, not much. Then our in lieu of property taxes also went down a little bit. So we had $22 million in property taxes net. Revenue limit minus property taxes, $348,000 in state aid. So we lost $762,000 between second interim and when I did this calculation, which was about, I don't know, a week ago.
And you would have lost more if ADA was flat, but you actually grew to P2, so it offsets some of it.
It offsets it. We didn't decline in property taxes that much either, so. So this is what Eric was talking about, the free falling. It really stops us to a certain extent because of the property taxes. So then our 9-10 calculation is we're using prior year ADA because we anticipate our ADA to go down because we have the transfers, at least no transfers. This incorporates the 4.25% in COLA that the state of California is going to give us. $26.6 million for the total revenue limit. We have the same increase here of about 4.25% in teacher salary. Meals for Needy is gone down slightly. 26 million 7 is subject to deficit, which brings us to 22. So there we lose between here and here $306,000. We have miscellaneous here, total revenue of 22 million. We are anticipating a 2% growth in property taxes, minus the in lieu 1.9. We have 22 million and 22.6 in property taxes. Now we are higher in property taxes than we are in revenue limit. So we will be, if all assumptions are work out the way we think, we will be $400,000 in state basic aid. It's not a warm and fuzzy. I'd like to be $1 million, $2 million into basic aid, but that's a start.
So Meg, go back over to the 348 figure in the bottom of the second column. So when I say 500,000, it could be 348, but there's just so much uncertainty. I'm rounding up. So, and then the other issue when Meg talked about COLA in the 910, obviously that COLA is more than offset by that huge deficit. You're seeing the 0.83. And I think the thing that's really notable, I mean, you can look at the absolute numbers, but if you look at horizontally, just look at the growth in the deficit factor.
So we go, I think it was 7, 11 to 16. All within 3 months.
That's scary.
It is very scary. So if you could scroll down, please. We have the secondary, same sort of situation. We come down here. We're using 0708's ADA. Came in, you know, just this isn't even relevant how we have 3 more ADA coming in here, but we use this number. Goes down, we have the 7, the 11, and the 16%. This comes down to property taxes 53, Santa Barbara Middle Charter comes out. We have 52 million, almost 53 million in property taxes. 53 minus 52, we get 6.2 million in revenue limit. And you can see that's a 2.2 difference between second interim and after the May 19th. Come up to, we believe we are going to decrease for 9, this is the P2 number for 8-9. So this is the number we have to use. We increased by 4.25% with 68 million, with the deficit of 16 between the May election revise, whatever you want to call it, and the 910 budget is 1.9 million.
Loss of ongoing.
Loss of ongoing. 57 for the revenue limit, a net effect of 53 million in property taxes, almost 54. 54 minus the 57, we're 3.2 million into state aid.
And I think what's interesting there is the green bar. If you look horizontally, the loss of state aid, which might beg a question about the whole inter-district. You know, when we look at the multi-year projections in the budget, you'll be looking at a 9-10, 10-11, and 11-12 scenario, and then we can take a look at the projections there.
Right now, I think we have about, 364 inter-district transfers into the high school, secondary school district. 364.
Okay. Board members, any further comments?
I know we were supposed to be stuff got us really excited, and we actually woke up.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Herron?
Just that trend on that green line, I mean, if it continues even anywhere close to that trend, we'll be in basic aid real quick.
Exactly.
Yes.
But, you know, as we said before, it's because the entitlement's being truncated. It's not because you have exponential growth in property tax values.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as the state budget settles out, Meg will give us a new projection on basic aid in the secondary district, and based on that, we may need to have a discussion this next fall on inter-district transfers. Oh boy.
I guess the other question is, when we come back to this on the 9th, when the May revises through, will the federal stimulus money, will that be pretty clarified at that point also?
We would hope so. I mean,
Right.
we thought that we would actually start seeing some of the cash, but obviously what's happening with the machinations in Sacramento, I think they're gonna have to revise some of those estimates.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. We're skipping item F3 and item F4. So now we are going on to item F5, the first reading of Reading Language Arts textbook adoption.
Robin Swaski.
Yes, and we've combined all of this together because we really need to get going on our state adoption for the reading language arts, and it includes the intervention that was spoken of a little bit earlier today with the Read 180. So down at the bottom on the fiscal impact and funding, you can see the different adoptions. The core text is McDougall-Littell, Macmillan, McGraw-Hill, and those would be delayed as far as the purchase until 2010. The intervention materials, the Scholastic Read 180, which was amazing that the elementary and the secondary, after much discussion, lots of looking at the materials, lots of talking to different publishers from different interventions, both elementary and secondary selected Read 180 as the program they want to use. Now, that starts in 4th grade, so it's 4th through 12th.
On that, what was the alternative that they were looking at?
Oh, boy.
There's something out of
I can
Pearson.
just see, I can,
Longman, oh,
there's a bunch of ditto papers, I know that. I remember it was a lot of dittos. It
Yeah.
was huge packets.
we looked at it.
Yeah, I don't recall the name, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, and you can see that those will be purchased, the intervention materials, with the American Recovery, Reinvestment and Recovery Act, Title I, which is very different than what Eric was just talking about, different pot of money. And Title I and EIA carryover and some Tier 3 flexibility. It's a large purchase up front and pays for itself over time. And it's wonderful to have the whole 412 with intervention, one program. We're being very cautious about how many licenses we have to buy license by child, by student place. It doesn't follow the actual kid, but the number of students. We're being very cautious in that this particular product, if used with fidelity, you have everything in place, typically students grow 2 to 3 years and catch up in reading. So, I mean, as many as 3 years, but the typical is 2 years growth. And so we don't want to buy too many of these, anticipating that, students are really going to make some progress. So we're picking our grade levels wisely, and the students that will be able to use this wisely. We anticipate in learning centers in the elementary and secondary, some special education students, some, students who have really had some learning issues, and also those that are behind for whatever reason.
Board members? Mr. Aaron?
Yes, was there some concern, my mind is, that this company has a tendency to charge for a lot of stuff after the fact? Or was that something totally different?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, this is pretty much up front. We saved about $200,000, I believe, having it be web-based at this point. And we're going to have to increase our bandwidth a little bit, but it's working out.
Dr. White isn't here tonight, but I just wanted to give my kudos to her because she really, it was an impressive process, and it was nice of her to include board members to at least come and observe one of those final discussions around Read 180, and really having it be a teacher-led, an administrative-led collaboration and discussion. And so I really feel very confident that this was the best curriculum to serve our students. Having said that, I think it's really clear that there are going to be challenges with implementation, and so I'm looking forward to hearing about that next year.
Yes, and it will be tiered. It's
Yeah.
not every single school is jumping right in and doing it right off the
Okay,
bat.
good.
We're going to make sure that we do it in waves, and we do it carefully so that it's done well.
Okay. I'm also excited that we can go ahead and improve the Treasures curriculum. I'm hoping that there may be chances for teachers to have professional development over the course of the year, or for administrators to do pre-planning, knowing what the adopted material is going to be.
Yes, we have schools that are actually saying, we want to pilot this, see if we can figure out how to pilot it. Just so, I mean, pilot in the sense we know we're adopting it, we've selected it, but we didn't want to go ahead and put 2 new adoptions in place. Not only could we not afford to pay for it all, but with a pilot, you get the materials for free and you get to go ahead and start it. So we have like a whole school that is begging to do that.
Okay, great. At this point, we will move on to item G, returning to consent
No.
items. Oh, sorry, Dr. Noel, I didn't see you waving your hand on that.
I just wanted to understand, when I read down this table about the recommendation, I see some, for Read 180, I see 9 through 12 every so often. Can you explain that? Because, I mean, I asked that question a little while ago, and I think the answer was, we don't do this for high school, but.
Are you looking at the very first page where you go down and it says 9
Yeah.
through 12, stage C?
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
particular level.
And the back of that page also.
Same thing. It's the level in which that the stage C book, you can see 7th and 8th grade is stage B, 9 through 12 is stage C. It's a different level of
Yeah,
book and
okay.
reading material for the appropriate age level.
So, well, am I reading this correctly then? So we're adopting this for grades 9 through 12?
We're adopting Read 180 actually for 4th through 12th.
Yeah, but I'm focusing on.
Oh, absolutely,
9
yes.
through 12, okay.
Yes,
But
So,
exactly.
because I was confused when I asked what intervention programs they were using at Santa Barbara High School on that.
Wait, I thought he
Yes,
said
Mrs.
they were
They-
going to use.
this
Read
is
180.
exactly
It was-
what they're
it was
using.
Did you
math-
say
It
that?
was math.
Yes.
It was math that
Okay.
they.
Yes,
Right.
this is exactly what's planned for the Bridges program.
Yeah. I understand that Read 180 is very expensive.
Yes.
Can you explain why it was chosen rather than a less expensive program?
Because the quality of Read 180, it is expensive for a reason. It's highly successful. If you look at the research, again, like I said, most students that are in it gain 2, sometimes 3 years in their grade level, their reading proficiency,
For how much time?
a year.
Okay. And the other thing I heard about it is that it's computer intensive.
Yes, it is. It's actually a centers approach. You have a time within the block of an hour and a half, or I can't remember for different grade levels, it's quite a block of time.
Do we
It's a
buy
re-
the software, or do we use it
Yes.
online? We buy it.
We buy licenses. We're using the
Yeah,
web-based
okay.
because it's cheaper,
Okay.
less expensive, and we buy a license for a number of students to be there.
Dr. Saros will remember when we had a project that used Riverdeep. And it just, I mean, it stumbled, I think, on a lot of things, but one of the things it stumbled on was that there was not enough tech support at the schools. And I've always remember that, thinking that when you go into something that is computer intensive, you have to budget tech support. Can you talk about that?
I can. We've been talking a lot about that. Dr. Davis Hayden has been in on every conversation about Read at 180 with the tech piece. He's been in even talking with the teachers about it, talking to the principals about it. We've had multiple conversations. That's one reason why we're staggering the implementation. We're not trying to do every single school, every single grade level. He's already, for instance, looked into the bandwidth piece, and we know what we have to do with that. He is helping the elementary and the secondary write their EETT competitive grants for hardware to support the program. He's dedicated certain people on his staff for assistance with Read 180. So a lot of it is going to be actually district supported, and then we'll train and work with the staff that's at the site.
The same question about professional development, but let me add a little more, because I guess I want to understand better. So teachers are teaching English. Will every English class use Read 180?
No,
Okay.
it's only for students that are far below basic and below
Okay.
basic.
Far below and below. So people,
Actually, there's a
students who are basic, what will they get?
They will be getting the core curriculum.
Core curriculum.
This is
Will they be getting an extra help or?
the basic students?
Yeah.
Yes, they would be getting a different level
an
within
extra
the
period?
pyramid.
Extra time?
I'm not sure if basic students are getting a double block. They could potentially, they're looking at the cutoff to be at, on the scaled scores, like
Well,
at
that's sort of-
325.
That's where I'm confused, because I read in the CDE stuff, they talk about the, where'd he go? The pyramid of interventions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm asking about the middle level in there, the so-called strategic students who are like what are they? It depends on the actual raw scores, but they're
Right.
sort of like a year and a half to up to 2 years behind grade level. Then the intensive interventions for the ones you're talking about.
Right.
And these programs are designed for intensive. And I wonder what do we do about the ones in the middle that really, they really can't handle the mainstream
Right.
course without extra help and extra time.
A lot of those kids are in double blocks of English
Now,
with
would
the
this program
support.
support that as well?
It can. Different schools, we're kind of looking at how many students would, some schools, not necessarily our district, but are looking at even basic kids going into Read 180. We're looking at the number of students we have, and we need to be strategic, and again, in the purchasing of the licenses, because we want to address the kids that are far, far below and get them up
Sure,
and move
sure.
them forward, knowing that some students, the basic students, in fact, could probably benefit from a short amount of time in this program and get right up there.
Is it are there multiple entry points with,
Yes.
and assessments?
Yes.
So the kids are not necessarily going to be working on the same thing.
No,
I mean, if
they're-
they test in somewhere in between, then the program can be tailored to their needs?
That's correct.
A lot of differentiation?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, small group work. Mhm.
Yeah. I think that pretty well
That
answers
answers?
my questions. Thank you.
I do want to, and I don't know if you want to take this up, but I think you do have the ability to waive the second reading if you'd want to. Is that, am I correct in that, on a conference item? If there's, I don't know if there's more questions or not, to expedite the ordering of the materials and the professional development and all of that.
And to get it off of an agenda when we have a lot of other things, although it could also come back on a consent agenda, so.
You do have that ability if you specify that in the motion.
I have
any-
just one
yeah,
question.
Mr. Hearn.
There's no secret that our technology infrastructure is not the best in the world. And I know at one time, we had talked and had plans in this next school year to include more infrastructure into the budget. But with everything going upside down, is that still going to, are we still going to be able to correct our basic infrastructure problems so that when this program comes out, we have the ability to use it?
I haven't had any conversations with Davis lately, but I think we'd have to, I mean, we can't have infrastructure that doesn't work if we're going to make this kind of significant investment in this.
Okay, thank you.
We did undertake a huge increase in bandwidth this year.
Well, I know we undertook it, but at the elementary schools, we haven't implemented it because Cox hasn't provided it. So,
Oh,
so there
I
is,
see what you're saying.
but now, I haven't talked to Davis about it for quite a while, a couple months. But he knows our contract allows it, just Cox wasn't able to provide it. But that may have changed now, but I'm sure Davis is.
He's
Dr.
very
Hagan looking
aware
at it,
of, yes, the need for that. Right.
Dr. Noel?
Just one more elaboration.
Yes.
So I picture the regular English language arts teachers doing regular classes, and I picture now specialized teachers who are masters at this program doing the kids who are far, far behind. I have a fuzzier picture of the kids in the middle of the pyramid. But the question I have is the movement up and down. The
How
movement up-
flexible is that?
Well, particularly, it kind of harkens back to some issues on special education we read in the FCMAT report about creating a better integration with the regular faculty and the intervention programs. And that's why it's just another part of the professional development. But to what extent do the regular English teachers at a particular grade have to really have some training in the intervention programs, although they're not teaching them?
Right.
Because they have to have a seamless integration with what's going on with these kids below who will be moving up.
Mhm.
That make-
That's a
that
good
makes
question.
sense?
No, it does make, it makes perfect sense to me. As we start out, because this is a state, a state-approved program, the SB 472 training, the 5 days of training that the state offers and all, this is part of that program. So, of course, we don't know now if it's going to continue to be one of those reimbursable kinds of trainings, but it is the training that's very intense and targeted for this program. So we'll have all the teachers, and by the way, principals are really looking at, some of the highest quality teachers working with this program, with these students. I mean, we're really taking that piece, seriously about that. The research shows you put your highest quality teachers
See, this
with you.
system doesn't work unless the regular classroom teacher spots the kid who is starting to lose it and gets them out into that next level down so that the more intensive help, and then takes them back. I mean, that's my understanding. It has to be very fluid.
Right. So, I mean, schools are looking at all of that. We've had long conversations with the principals about how we implement this, how we make sure that you don't lock kids in when they're ready to move, when they're out of one program, and how do you do that?
See, when I talk this way, all I think about is, in the back of my head, money. This sounds expensive, and if we're gonna pay all this money for the program, I think we really have to pay the money to make this program work.
We agree.
And I'm prepared to do it, but.
And luckily, the
Shouldn't be a
train.
surprise.
Right, the money that goes for that is out of
And Mr.
Title
Smith,
II funding.
Is that a smile or a grimace?
Well, it's out of money that you can't use for anything else but training. So it's not going to hit anything with general fund. It has nothing to do with, teachers' jobs or anything.
Title II,
Yes.
Mr. Herron?
How much money are we talking about? Is that in here
For
someplace?
the training,
No, this whole program. Is there a dollar amount
oh
in this
boy.
document?
it's changed so many times because of Cynthia Dr. White negotiated
I mean, it's hard for me to
long
vote
and
on a
hard,
motion.
and I don't believe the dollar amount's in here exactly. And for one reason, we're still deciding about how many licenses per school. Principals and teachers are really looking at the student data and figuring out how many licenses do we really need to have it be effective, but don't buy too many because we know we're anticipating a lot of success with it.
All right, well, how about having it come back on the consent agenda with a dollar
Do
figure
you want me to
attached?
put a dollar, as close as we can get it?
As close as
Okay,
you can get it.
Sounds good.
As the current estimate as a consent agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we are going to move to item G, returning to consent items. And let's run through our consent list. First off was D3, approval of staff travel, out-of-state travel, and our expenses in excess of $500. Dr. Noel?
Mindful of, that was I.
I'm sorry? Yes, Dr. Noel.
I asked. I am just really mindful about every dollar, and I see us paying for conference travel. And I just, Mr. Smith has taught me that what we save this year has a big impact on how bad a shape we're in next year. I'm wondering, what on earth are we doing approving this?
Are you talking about specifically the first item that comes out of the general
I'm
fund?
talking about D3, yeah.
Right, there's.
Both items. I don't want to mention names or anything.
Right. But the second item is from the
Yes.
school safety grant, which I assume
Right.
is.
Right, and
Well, is that-
unfortunately, it's already happened.
that
We
f-
really try to catch those, and when it comes to us afterward, there's not a lot we can do about it.
Although it's also restricted.
Terrible. So they can spend the money and then come in and say, hey, will you approve this for us?
Is that-
Somehow, we knew it was happening, and we knew that this was a really important conference to attend, and it is out of the safety grant. It was already well-planned in the budget to have this. It's a very important conference to go to. There's really not another one like it. But the actual paperwork and I'm not quite sure exactly what happened with the paperwork. It was,
Well,
staff knew
this
it.
is not without precedent. We recurringly get items to approve after the money's been spent. And I really think that's a pretty bad way to run a business.
I agree.
Certainly a business.
Is this
and a
tier?
pretty bad
what-
way to run a public agency.
Thank you. Mr. Herron?
What tier is funding school safety grant?
I think it is.
It's probably
is it
three.
It's
probably
three.
tier three.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
Okay,
that's.
so we needed to
Is
think
there-
about that as well.
Is there no flexibility on the public, on the safety thing?
There's flexibility, but remember, one of the things we did with Tier 3 is that we took 30% off the top of all, categoricals across the board. So we kind of took a pretty big bite into Tier 3. With respect to the first one, I mean, I see that as being mission critical because the whole issue with credentialing and credential monitoring, unless you're up to speed on that costs us money, big money, if we do it wrong. So that's just my own philosophical, and there's no other way to pay for it other than the unrestricted general fund.
Well, forgive me, Mr. Smith, I don't mean to quarrel with you, but then why bring this to the board? Why are we here?
Well, that hasn't been approved, that's a recommendation.
Yes, you can certainly, for, that one is not happening till October. So let's have a motion on this one way or the other.
Which one we're
Well, one is
voting on the
passed.
fait accompli?
One is, you could certainly separate it out if you want and do the fait
I
accompli.
move to approve the fait accompli.
But only the fait accompli. Is there a second on that one?
I'll second it.
And I will never do so again.
So that is specifically move to approve the travel, out-of-state travel and our expenses in excess of $500 for the conference on the California Association of Supervisors of Child Welfare and Attendance that was April 21st through 24th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that one passes 4-0.
I move to deny the other expenditure.
Is there a second? That motion dies for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
That one passes 3-1.
Can I also just say that Dr. Noel is accurate in that we have previously seen other things come to us that were fait accompli, and I don't think that needs to happen anymore. I mean, does it? I mean,
No, it
can we
doesn't
say
need to.
no
It doesn't need to
before?
happen. The frustration on my part is that, I have sent, so has Dr. Sarvis, multiple messages out to everyone. Now, this happens to be a staff member right here in our district office. But, to the sites, it often happens at the sites. And, it's already gone by. They've used maybe site funding to pay for it, categorical, but it makes no sense. I mean,
We've started
It's-
the demerit system.
yeah.
Can you make sure Mr. Andrews knows that
Yes.
we're unhappy?
Yes. Michael Gonzalez will make sure that
So if it is
happens.
site funding, is it required that the board approve these?
Yes, for out of, yes, mhm. Anything over $500.
All right, moving on to item D8. This is the approval of master contract 2008-2009-105, an individual service agreement with Summit View School, Valley Glen, as per settlement agreement.
This is mine.
What are we on?
D8.
D8. Actually, this prompted a question that I've had multiple times, and I'm just taking the opportunity to ask it now. Quite often, our contracts with some of these outside providers are out of Santa Barbara, out of the county, far away. Are there not local providers that could be doing this instead?
We often, that's something that happens in the IEP, setting. In this particular case, we're taking over the payment that SELPA was paying. It's a case that you're familiar with. And we're just finished, this is for the end of this school year. But you're right in that there are different agencies that do service locally, and depending on the history of the case and what's happened in the IEP process, sometimes it ends up that it's not a local agency.
And that's sometimes not our decision about who the provider is necessarily.
That's correct.
All right, thank you. Well, then I will move to approve agenda item D8.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0. D10, approval of recommended personnel action items dated May 26, 2009.
I wanted an explanation of the $137,000 item.
That's salary and benefits, including health and welfare, and salary and statutory and health and welfare benefits. So that's not a salary, that's a total compensation figure.
Total comp.
That's total comp.
And this is the position that you had to upgrade?
That's correct.
Because you weren't getting any.
We got nobody.
Okay.
Got
We got somebody good.
So this is the internal
Okay, so it's
auditor.
not 137,000 plus benefits how to get somebody, but that's.
No, that's the total comp. That's all statutory benefits, which are proportional to salary and health and welfare.
While we're on that topic, I may add that we're very pleased with this appointment, and I'll get you her resume in the board brief.
Well, so there's someone, we have someone.
It's this person. Mhm.
I don't read the names. I don't want to mention them.
All right, is
Okay.
there a motion on item D10?
I'll congratulate.
Oh, wait, Dr.
Okay.
Noel.
Do you have questions on D10 also?
I was going to make the motion, but first I was going to congratulate.
I wanted to know down here, increases in time. I don't see a dollar amount for that.
Okay.
One of them is an increase to become full-time. That's the one that caught my attention. You can call it an increase in time, but it's basically moving a part-time position to a full-time position.
The school program liaison, do you have any information on those?
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's the transition partnership?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
Transition partnership?
What?
It's the transition partnership program. It's the,
Well, it'd be nice in the future to get dollar amounts on these.
Mhm.
Okay, I move to adopt D10.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And Mr. Herron, do
I
you
was
wanted
just
to
gonna-
congratulate somebody?
No, I was just going to thank Meg and Eric for expeditiously finding that internal auditor. It solves a problem that's been ongoing for a long time.
Yep. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes 4-0. D13, approval of purchase order report for the period May 6, 2009 through May 19th through 2009.
That was me again. Actually, and I'm also just taking this opportunity to make a request, and I wasn't sure the best place to do it, but this seemed like a place to begin. Under the business administration warrants, there's a considerable amount here. And what I would like to do, because I think we're coming up on the end of this budget cycle, is to ask for the board to receive an annual review of all our legal expenses, maybe broken out by categories so that we have a reference point.
We actually started tracking them by category this year. I think we have 9 different management codes broken out between like collective bargaining, special ed, board and administration, et cetera, et cetera. So at the end of the year, we can provide you a whole detailed expenditure listing.
That would be helpful. I mean, as we look towards cutting costs, I mean, if we can identify areas where we're maybe making mistakes that are causing money, that would be an opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Dr. Noel?
Are you asking for cumulative totals?
Yeah.
Okay, then I won't ask for cumulative totals.
Okay.
But it would be very, very
Yes.
helpful to know.
Yeah.
I mean, so I can add this up. I got $105,000 to one law firm.
Just on
Well,
this one.
I have a recollection of voting for that same law firm in the past. It's pretty clear what it's public knowledge what it's for, but cumulative totals would put any particular thing in perspective.
Sorry, Mr. Herron?
Yes, on March 10th, we approved another $105,000 to the same law firm.
Well,
And,
I knew it was there, and I knew it was bigger than a bread box,
And
but I
it-
didn't know it was that much.
I mean, my comment, it's a lot of money,
I'll say. My
and,
God.
you know, I guess there's explanations for it, but I hope that through our new restructuring, we can avoid paying law firms that much money. But it's hard for me to even have any idea of what I'm voting for when I'm paying somebody $105,000 in March and another $105,000 in May. I don't know what they're doing, but I guess they're doing something. But I hope somebody knows what they're doing and justifies what they're doing.
They're lawyers.
And that it ends. I mean, we got to have an end to it at some point. Or maybe it's normal. I don't know what. Maybe last year we spent the same amount. I don't know. But it strikes me as a lot of money for legal, for special ed. And I had one other question.
Yes.
I mean, just magically, and you know, I love Giordano's, but they have $9,999.99. Now, that takes it under the 10,000, but
Where's that one? Where is
on
that?
page, I don't know what page it is, flip through some pages.
Within the warrants?
It's in the warrants, same thing we were just looking at, but it's like
The page numbers are on the upper
where are they?
corners.
Oh, page 5. So I know it's under 10,000, so I guess that gives it special something, but I'm curious what? How does it magically come in a penny under $10,000? And who does it benefit and why do they do it?
It's a board policy.
Oh, but what's the difference? If it was
10,000
10,000,
ceiling, 10,000, you have to have board approval.
well, we're giving board approval right now. So what's the difference?
The
We're approving
difference.
the warrant, it's already been spent.
That's absolutely right. The $10,000 threshold is basically these bills have not been paid or purchase orders have not been issued until the board approves. The other ones are coming to the board on an informational basis. So obviously, whoever issued that PO wanted it to come on an informational basis. I don't know why they wouldn't want Giordano's to come in front of the board, you know, but
So we probably got,
Probably just.
yeah, that could be
expedites it,
too.
yeah.
Could
we got
be
one less
expedited.
radish, I guess. Huh?
All right,
If
Dr.
I may
Noel?
comment on Mr. Herron's concerns. Some time ago, I checked out one of those, it was a lower amount at that time. And the thing that I found troubling was that for the same vendor, there were repeated 9,999s, or in this case, it was 4,999, over and over and over again. So the cumulative total was substantial, but we never saw that. And I think we really ought to be, have that information.
I want to make it very clear, I love Giordano's, I love the Giordano family. You know, I just use that as a example of something that caught my eye.
Right, okay, is there a motion on this? Item D13? Oh, Dr. Noel?
One last thing, as long as we're talking about it, it's on the agenda, it's legal for me to say something, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
We think.
I think these lawyer fees need to be examined, the special ed ones, examined in the context of reforms and urgent reforms for alternative dispute resolution. Now, Dr. Sarvis, I mentioned that in a note to him recently, and this just underlines the importance of doing that. Maybe rushing into that before we get the whole FICMAT thing, but we need to get control over these expenses.
Okay,
And
thank you.
we are.
Board members, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
D10.
It's
13.
D13, actually.
Second.
Okay,
D13,
yes. So, move to approve item D13, approval of the purchase order report for the period May 6th through May 19th, 2009. All those in favor? Aye. It passes 4-0. Item D15, approval of award of mobile food service trailer bid to Custom Mobile Food Equipment Incorporated, bid CNS 0809-01.
I got most of my questions answered, but I still wanted to mention it. I had two questions when I read this. Is a portion of this funding from Orphala, you know, was for a mobile food service trailer. And I wondered, is the 79,000 what they meant by a portion in the grant? And I found out that really the grant could go up to $85,000 for a mobile trailer. So this 79,000 was under, you know, what the grant allocated. So I was happy with that. But in the write-up, I noticed that there was also a bid that came in too late that wasn't considered. And so I asked, what was that bid? And it turns out that bid was $51,000. And it came in 3 days late. Now, it did have some caveats which made the difference of $28,000 somewhat less, I guess. But I guess I have a question. We're paying $28,000 more because somebody came in 3 days late. Do we have any other options? I mean, is there urgency on this? Could we reject this bid and put it out again and maybe get one for 50 or 60,000 that is not 79? You know, I just don't know how that works. But it seems that we had a bid for 51, we're going to be paying 79. On the face of it, that's 28,000 more than we might have had to pay.
Yeah, I don't know if we're doing an apples to apples comparison, and I don't know, Dave, were you involved with this? This is all Brian and Nancy's deal, was it not? Or were you somewhat involved?
Yeah, no, and I was not involved with that, but I would say that that there are certain reasons to reject bids, and so if, as long as you were not over budget and had available funds.
This was rejected because it was 3 days late.
Yeah, it was rejected.
3 days late.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so.
I would just hate to reject this bid on, before we knew everything. I mean, feel more comfortable if you wanted to table it so I could go talk to Brian Tangway and make sure that it was an apples to apples comparison.
It was not apples to apples because he did say that there were a couple caveats, interpretations of the code of what was necessary that made the difference not as great.
Yeah, on the write-up, there's unfortunately, there's not the same evaluation that there was for the bid that was open.
Exactly.
So we don't know if it's
That's my point.
apples to apples. And plus, those rules are different than public contract code that I'm real familiar with. The purchasing rules are different, so I hate to take one and try to apply it to the other. That wouldn't be fair.
Yeah. I know, I understand that
Yeah.
totally. Just that on the surface of it, it's $28,000 from Orfala, that if we could spend it on food rather than a trailer, I mean, I just question it.
Correct.
Is that what they would allow us to spend it on?
Well, we have a $136,000 grant,
I
and a
think,
portion of it was for this, which was $85,000.
yeah, I think my recollection is when the board approved the grant and you did an acceptance of it, it was the infrastructure, some training. I'm not sure if food was one of the things that was identified in the grant.
I don't know if it's food. I just know that there's $29,000 that could be spent someplace else,
Right.
wherever in the food program. And I think Orfala, if we save $29,000 and spend it someplace else, they might be happier if that's what it ends up. I don't know procedurally how we do that.
Well, you
If
can
we wanted to.
Like I say, you can table it until Mr. Smith brings some information, and then the other question would be, did they evaluate the bid to even see if it was responsive? Sometimes when a bid comes in late, you don't evaluate it, and so that evaluation may have not been done. So once you evaluate it, you may want to reject it anyway.
Yeah, but it's worth 2 weeks to find out.
Yep.
I don't know what the urgency is either. So, I mean, maybe something has to be bought next week.
And I guess the related question is whether we have enough time to bring it back.
I don't know.
We don't know.
I mean, I'm sure we can do the evaluation and bring it back. I mean, I don't know if there's an urgency or not. I don't think so either. But I think Dave's probably right. I mean, generally the protocol is something comes in late, you just automatically reject. So, but if the board wishes, we can do a side-by-side comparison and see if the cost differential is,
I would like that.
I would just say at the Parent Advisory Council, Nancy Weiss was there and was so excited about getting this trailer and is already thinking about where it's going to go at Santa Barbara High and, really. So I don't want to do anything to slow that down in terms of it being there for the beginning of the school year, but certainly if it's just a couple of weeks to evaluate the bid.
Well, I guess you can evaluate the bid, but then what's your conclusion going to be? Because if you reject the bid, then you have to go through a new bidding process, and that will start to delay things, and that would have an effect. So it may be an exercise to go through, but then we would really need to seriously think about the consequences if we decided to reject the bid. But in terms of tabling it for 2 weeks, I'm fine with that.
Good.
All right.
I'll move to, do we need a motion?
I don't think we
No,
need a
okay.
motion. We will simply pull that until the next agenda. Item D17, approval of contract award to LAC Construction for portable classroom relocation at Washington Elementary School.
Yes, my only question on that was that I didn't see in the write-up enough differentiation of what was Phase 1, what was Phase 2, what was going to happen. I have had communication with Mr. Hetjonk, and I'm satisfied that enough will be done in Phase 1, and I understand that there has been communication with the principal, so he knows the timeline. I'm worried about one neighbor. Has she been notified that it's good, the portables won't be moved for a year plus? But I got enough satisfaction that I'm happy with it now. It's just that when I read this, there wasn't enough information to satisfy me that Phase 1 work would be substantial.
And maybe, Mr. Hetyak, you could just
Well,
quickly summarize that.
Well, once we have a contract, then we will have a meeting with the city, and we'll come to some sort of resolution, and then that resolution will be relayed to the neighbor.
Yeah, that was my other concern is that daily fine that's out there. I guess is still in negotiations, and I didn't want to
I don't know what the
let a contract if there was a daily fine going to be hit in place.
I wouldn't characterize the daily fine as being in negotiations. I would say that since our legal counsel has contacted the city, they've not responded.
Well, I hate to say it, but to me, that's negotiations. We have one position, they have a position evidently, and it's going to have to be resolved. But you gave me an alternative that would, if it couldn't be resolved, you have an alternative to solve that too, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion?
I will move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes 3-0 with now Dr. Noel out of the room. Item D18, approval of change order number 2, Santa Barbara High School exterior painting of the main building and gymnasium.
This was another one that concerned me, because in the write-up, it talks about a lawsuit, and that this is a settlement. And typically, I would think that lawsuits would be done in closed session, but I've also now been determined that this is the way that was negotiated out, and I would hesitate to even open my mouth about the concept for fear of ruining a negotiated settlement. But if we were in closed session, I would have a lot of questions.
All right, is there a motion? Oh, sorry, Mr. Price, you wanted to speak on this? Sorry.
Well, I don't have to, but if the board is interested in hearing a brief comment, I'm happy to
I
give
would
it.
love a brief comment.
The change orders that were put in on this job were for $330,000. There was inadequate documentation. There was a lawsuit that followed. It was always our belief that there was some money that would have regularly been approvable had correct documentation been forthcoming. However, the change orders at the magnitude of $330,000 we felt were ridiculous, to put it frankly. Last week, on the eve of beginning to need to incur legal expenses for expensive depositions, including one the next day in Los Angeles, the plaintiff's position essentially collapsed, and they said that they would agree to a change order of $67,500, which was but a fraction of what the amount in dispute was. The only way that I had the ability to tie them into such a settlement without giving them another week, let's say, in which they could back out, was to get them to sign a change order in writing then and there, which they did, and they submitted it prior to the end of last week, so that we knew we had a deal, subject to this change order being approved with Mr. Hetyonk's explanation as to what the unique circumstances were. And certainly we would agree that ordinarily any settlement of any legal matter would be brought to you in a different manner, obviously in closed session. So I hope that satisfies your concern, Mr. Herron.
Oh, yes, it has to. So, yes, it does.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve D18.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. With that, we are through with the consent agenda items, I should say. We are moving to item H, coming events. I know that Dr. Sarvis has already listed a number of coming events.
Board members, thank you for offering to go to graduations, awards assemblies, and all those sorts of things.
Then there's item I, board comments and correspondence.
I would just have two. I think we should hire those Pueblos economic team. They took $100,000 and turned it into $200,000 in 1 quarter. So if we have any money, let's call those kids in and have them invested for us. So that was great to read about them. And then I just can't help but comment on the Green Academy that I went home and read in the past papers. But fantastic article about the Green Academy at the high school, which was very informative and very good.
Here
Yes,
our
Senator Burr.
spelling bee championship.
Yes. Yep, we have the Hensley family, which is quite impressive. And I
Quite
hope that they will-
famous at this point.
Yeah, so that was amazing news too. So this is from the Daily Sound.
The papers have been filled, and all the information from the school district with all the accolades our students have received, you know, and it's tremendous. I mean, as I think Mr. Smith mentioned, sometimes we forget to talk about the good things, but there's so many, and the diversity of the students and what they're learning and what they're going on to, it's surely not cookie cutter. We have so many opportunities and so many things that they're doing that it's really a pleasure to see it happening.
Moving on to item J, future agenda items. Obviously, we know there's a new meeting on the 16th of June. Anything else?
I actually would like to ask that we revisit the security issue at Santa Barbara High School. When I was there on Friday, not only did a tagging occur while I was on the campus, I didn't see it, but it happened while I was there. There was also a broken window in this brand-new building that's going to be where the bridge program is housed. I mean, they haven't even moved in yet, and the window's broken. And I talked at length to some of the administrators at the school, so I would just like to ask that we bring back specifically security issues at Santa Barbara High School.
All right, other board members?
I would like to, I know we've talked about it in the past, and I know you have it on the agenda, but at some point, you know, a review of the intra-district, what's happened, how it's happened, what's going to happen, you know. And I know our schedules are tight, but I know it's on the agenda for some point.
We have that on the list. However, if the board's going to make further decisions about class size at the elementary level, we have to wait until our meeting that's mid-June, June 16, before we even act on it and then have our discussion.
Okay.
How are we communicating to the people on waiting lists for decisions? Obviously, they're going to be postponed for months, and they're on pins and needles probably. How are we,
Well,
what type of communication is taking place?
We were anticipating that, first we were anticipating this board meeting, we would be able to have that agenda item discussion. And then anticipating that it might take longer, Mr. Gonzalez sent a letter out to all of the parents that have intra-district transfer applications in place, and they're in the lottery or on a list, and told them that we anticipated being able to give them more information the first week in June. Well, now that doesn't look possible. So we may need to, I don't know if you want to address this, Mr. Gonzalez. We haven't been able to talk, the two of us, about this because we wanted to see.
Just to clarify, the letter actually stated that we would notify them after the 1st of June, not the first week of
Oh,
June.
good. I know it's very difficult.
Yeah,
so.
and the more communication we do, the better.
Yes, Dr. Noel.
I had a reflection on the distinction between those who can't and those who won't.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that right now for future agenda items.
Oh.
Because we're on.
Board comments when?
We've
Passed it already.
passed.
Oh, man.
Adam, but feel free to put it in a note and we can read it.
I would like to have on a future agenda item a discussion of the idea of students who can't and students who won't, and how that should, if at all, impact our education philosophy and policy.
Okay. At this point, we are going to jump back to the B section of the agenda and return to closed session to discuss item B6, public employee appointment.